Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. And I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around the virtual water coolers. We talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, all sorts of good stuff. And guys, you made it through to the end of another week. Congratulations. I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend planned ahead of yourselves, filled with something fun, something relaxing, time with family, maybe time alone, whatever it is that you need right now. I hope you get it this weekend. And it is Friday, guys, and we've got a number of things that we need to talk about here today. Now, before we get into any of that, I want to remind you guys, you can't always watch the John Campea Show wherever you are. Sometimes you're commuting, you're in the gym, you're at work. Not the best time to pop open a YouTube video. But if that's the case, good news, we've got the audio-only version, of course, the John Campea Show podcast version. Just go to your favorite podcasting app of choice, search for it, and subscribe to the podcast today. And with that down, guys, let's get right into it and start talking about our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get on to main topic number one. And our first topic today gets submitted to us by John H., who writes, what does John H. write? There he is. Looks like there's been another development in the Tenet case. Last month, Deadline said that at least 80% of cinemas worldwide needed to be open for the film to release July 17th. NATO, that's the North American Theater Owners Association, that's kind of the body that represents all the movie theaters. NATO is now saying that they expect 90% of theaters will be open by mid-July. Is this confirmation Warner Brothers will push ahead and plan for July 17th? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, we've been talking about that number for a little while now, that, July 17th, is supposed to be the first big major film to open the theaters back up is Tenet, July 17th. Can the theaters be open by then? Some numbers were being speculated that maybe about 80% of theaters would need to be open in order for Tenet to release. Well, now we're hearing, this comes to us from IndieWire, that NATO is saying that 90% of all the movie theaters will be open by the time July 17th comes around. This comes to us from IndieWire, who writes, the National Association of Theater Owners, NATO, which represents 68,000 screens in 99 countries, is tracking theater reopenings around the world, country by country, and checking their market share. On that basis, per a spokesperson, they expect some 90% of theaters worldwide to be open by July 17th. The date still set for Warner Brothers' release of Christopher Nolan's Tenet. All right. So there are a couple of things here that come to mind when I look at that. Number one, the notion of there being 90% of the theaters reopened by, say, next month. The reason there's a part of me that buys that buys the idea that, yeah, we're going to get that many theaters open by then, is because we're seeing a lot of stuff reopen, even in a place that was hard hit by the COVID-19 stuff as, say, Los Angeles. Walking around yesterday, seeing all the restaurants open and full. And by full, I mean full to the limitations they were having of how many people could be in the restaurant at a time. So, they would stagger, you couldn't have two people sitting in tables beside each other. They had social distance. They were making people, make sure they had masks on when they come on, temperature checks, hand sanitizer on the hands. But as far as what their capacity was, they filled their capacities. Like almost every restaurant I saw had a lineup outside because they're only letting so many people in once. This kind of goes to something that I've been saying for a while, that while I do believe there's going to be a lot of people cautious about wanting to go back to regular day things, there's also, you can't underestimate the desire in a lot of people to get back to something that feels like regular life. And as the restaurants started to slowly reopen, we've seen people really flock. Not everybody, clearly, because a lot of people are going to be justifiably cautious about doing that. But a lot of people nonetheless are flocking back there. When I see that, and I see malls now reopening, I see stores reopening, I see restaurants reopening. Now, whether that's smart or dumb, that's a topic for another time. That's a different discussion altogether, whether that's smart or dumb. But the fact of the matter is we are seeing them all reopen at this point. Seeing all that reopen now, when we're still taking into consideration that we're more than a month away from when they are targeting to get these theater opens, when we hear that Regal last week announced that they are going to be open by mid-July, Cinemark is going to start rolling out reopening their theaters this month. We know AMC is going to be having an announcement coming soon saying they're going to have their theaters open by mid-July. And now having NATO coming out and saying all our analytics are telling us we're going to have 90% of the theaters in America open by then. Does that then guarantee that Tenet will be in theaters on June 17th as they're, July 17th, I should say, as they're predicting at this point? No, doesn't guarantee it. Does it bode well? Sure, it bodes well. I mean, it's in the world of, is that a positive sign or a negative sign? It's a positive sign, but there's still don't think that makes it an ironclad guarantee. There are still people that would like to see Tenet moved. There are still talks that they may move the date. So don't bet the bank on the idea that Tenet will 100% open on July 17th. I think it will. And I think these things of the theater saying they're going to be 90% open by the time it comes around, I think that speaks to that. But there are still whispers and still reports going around that there are still internal debates going on at Warner Brothers about whether they should move it or not. So I think this bodes well for it, but don't take it by any means as any sort of ironclad guarantee, because it is simply not. It still may get bumped, but I think this bodes well for it. Question for you guys is, what do you think about this report? Do you believe it? Do you think, like, we're already seeing theaters starting to reopen? Do you think by mid-July, we are going to see 90% of movie theaters open? As an extension of that, do you think we're going to see Tenet actually hit its July 17th release date? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I think it looks good, but you never know. Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Maxie S., who writes, "Hey, John and crew." Well, hello, Maxie. How you doing? Where did I lost my spot? Now is a good time. I lost my spot for a second. Now is a good time to get educated about U.S. race relations. It's true. Now is a good time to do that. African-American history and the civil rights movement specifically. Which are your favorite movies covering these subjects? I highly recommend Mississippi Burning, Malcolm X, 12 Years a Slave, and Amistad for starters. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, one of the beautiful things about movies is that movies speak directly to our experience, right? They speak directly to our world. Sometimes they speak about the way we wish the world could be, the way the world could be. A lot of times it speaks to the way the world is through the eyes of the filmmaker and the person telling the story. And I think that's one of the many, many reasons why movies are so valuable. And you're right. There's never been a more applicable time for people to catch up on some stories being told through the lens of those storytellers, to hear stories like this. Now, let me preface this by saying this, all right? In talking about asking me what movies do I think are the ones people should start with, keep in mind, even by white guy standards, I am a pasty white Canadian Italian boy, right? First of all, I'm Canadian, so I'm not even American. I'm Canadian. So, John, what are the most important American films about race relations? You're going to ask a Canadian white guy that? Okay, let's go there. So understand that I am, even by Canadian and white guy standards, I am a pasty white Canadian Italian dude. Asking me, it's like asking me, John, what is the most authentic Cuban cuisine? I don't know. I can't tell you what is the most authentic Cuban cuisine because I'm not a Cuban cuisine expert and I'm not Cuban. But what I can tell you is about my experiences with Cuban cuisine that made me appreciate Cuban cuisine. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm no expert on Cuban cuisine. I'm not Cuban. I can't tell you what is the most authentic Cuban cuisine in Los Angeles, but I can tell you about a couple of my experiences that made an impact on me and that I appreciated. So understand that when I start listing off some movies here that You know, I made a joke to a friend of mine once when we came out of watching Coco, the Pixar film Coco. And I said, man, it really felt like authentic Mexican culture. But keep in mind, I know as much about authentic Mexican culture as Taco Bell knows about authentic Mexican cuisine. So keep that in mind. So I'm telling you this from my perspective. I'm just going to tell you the movies that, to me, on the issues of civil rights, race relations, all that kind of stuff, I'm just going to tell you the movies to me that made an impact on me. All right. There are going to be people who are watching this who say, well, John, that one's not really authentic to the real life. Okay, I accept that. I'm just saying these are the ones that made an impact on me. So with all those asterisks there, let me get started on a couple of films that really made an impact on me. And the one I'm going to start with is kind of a softball one. At least I always thought it was. And that's Remember the Titans. Now, Remember the Titans doesn't have a lot of subtlety. Remember the Titans really tells its story in the form of a parable, really. And parable storytelling really is just putting everything right up front, right? Making obvious allegories and things like that to get the point across. And so I've always liked Remember the Titans, but I've always considered it, you know, in these types of films that we're talking about now, as more of a softball one. Until about 2 or 3 months ago, Ann and I sat down one night, you know, and we just had the rest of the evening free, and we decided to pop on a movie, and we decided to pop on Remember the Titans. And it still very much is more parable-like storytelling, but I found it incredibly profound. Because again, it does what a movie like this needs to do. It makes me, there's an empathy to the movie. It makes somebody like me sit down and try to look at the story through another person's eyes. And whether how true it is, authentic it is, and all that kind of stuff, I can't speak to that. All I can say is that it truly made an impact on me. Not just when I first saw it, but then when I revisited it years later. And by the way, this movie, you forget how stacked this cast is, right? Well, of course, we know Denzel, we know Will Patton, but besides Denzel and Will Patton, Ryan Hurst. Who's Ryan Hurst? Oh, he was only my favorite character on one of my favorite shows. He was Ope on Sons of Anarchy. I had totally forgotten that he was in this movie. Donald Faison is in this movie. I had totally forgotten that Donald Faison was in this. Oh, and by the way, Will Patton's daughter, yeah, the cheerleader from Heroes, Hayden Panettiere. I totally forgot she was. Well, actually, no, I didn't forget. I never knew that little girl was the cheerleader from Heroes. I never knew that. Kate Bosworth was in there. Ryan Gosling was in there. This movie was stacked, like top to bottom. So out of the three I'm going to mention, the first one I'm going to mention here is Remember the Titans. Now, I also want to mention here, you mentioned a couple of my favorites, Mississippi Burning, particularly Amistad. I'm not going to put Amistad on my list because it's Amistad, while maybe my favorite Steven Spielberg film, Amistad is so removed from us in time that I think some people will watch it and disassociate the issues going on in it with today's world. So I'm not going to include that one, even though it's probably my favorite film on this list, but I'm probably not going to include it on that one for now, just so you know, because people say, John, you're always talking about Amistad. Why isn't Amistad in this list? That's why. But God, I love Amistad. Okay. Let's move on to the next one I'm going to talk about. This one is one I was late to the party to. I only saw it about a year ago. I think it was about a year ago, the first time that I watched it. It's narrated by Samuel L. Jackson, based on the writings of James Baldwin. As kind of a completed memoir of a work he was working on at the time. But it's called I Am Not Your Negro. I don't know about you, but whether we're talking about sports or whether you're talking about the environment or whether you're talking about parenthood or whether you're talking about hockey or whether you're talking about computers, there's whatever topic or subject you're talking about. When I hear somebody who is incredibly articulate and is an extremely good communicator, it takes that, I don't know, there's something about that drags me down into the deeper waters with it. You know, when it's being conveyed by somebody who's incredibly a great orator, somebody who's got great communication skills, blah, blah, blah. And the footage of James Baldwin in this is powerful. I remember the first trailer I ever saw for I Am Not Your Negro. it's brilliant because it starts with a very simple statement that is also incredibly profound. And it starts with this old footage of James Baldwin saying, you know, give me liberty or give me death. When a white person in America says that, people stand and cheer and applaud. When a black man says it in America, people vilify him. I'm paraphrasing, but people vilify him. They want to make an example out of that black man to make sure nobody else does what he just did. And I remember the very first time I saw that trailer, and just it opened with that. It's a very simple saying. It almost sounds like something maybe you find in a Chinese fortune cookie. You know, give me liberty, give me death. When a white man says it, people stand and applaud. When a black guy says it, people get their backs up. But the way he communicated, I remember me as a Canadian dude listening to that and going, that's incredibly simple, yet incredibly profound. And that's really something that this movie hits you with multiple times as you're watching it. Wow, that was incredibly simple, yet incredibly profound. There is a depth to the simplicity of it. Because it seems so simple, maybe it's something we ignored before. But when somebody with these type of articulation skills says it, it takes it to a whole new level of meaning. And suddenly you found yourself sitting there watching the movie and you're being impacted by it. You're being seriously impacted by it. So the first one I wanted to mention was Remember the Titans. The second one, and these are in no particular order, the second one I wanted to mention is I Am Not Your Negro. If you have not checked that one out, by all means, please do. The third one I want to mention that made an impact on me is not going to be on many people's lists. It's not going to be on many. I'll tell you right now, it is not going to be on a lot of people's lists. But this is a movie to me that when I walked out of a press screening, I was on the studio lot in one of their screening rooms when I first watched this movie. And I stepped outside and I'm just standing in the middle of like this huge studio lot in Hollywood. And I pulled out my phone and I posted onto Facebook. I said, I couldn't tell people what movie I'd just seen yet. There was embargo, but I wrote out, I just watched a movie that reminds me about why I love the movies. And that movie for me is the 2011 Tate Taylor film, The Help, led by 5 powerhouse actresses and performances, particularly led by Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis. But it's got Emma Stone, Octavia Spencer, Viola Davis. It's got Bryce Dallas Howard, who is now one of the directors of Mandalorian. And that was awesome. And it was my first real introduction to Jessica Chastain. Like 5 powerhouse lead performances in that. It was just, and of course, Academy Award winner Allison Janney was in there as well, playing Emma Stone's mother. She was a great character in it. It was a movie to me that because of it didn't tell the, how do I put this? The movie did not tell the story of its subject matter through the eyes of high-profile, recognizable figures and heroes. It told the story through the lens and perspective of people just living in it and how they responded to it. And to me, it was incredible. I have been a massive, massive fan of both. Let me highlight them both here again. Where'd she go? Both Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis, both Academy Award winners. Now, seeing them act together on screen was crazy good. They brought such a power and whatever to it. And then you juxtapose them against a character like Bryce Dallas Howard. And I'm speaking just from a personal experience with the movie. There's a moment that really made me uncomfortable in a way that I needed to feel uncomfortable. There's a moment in The Help that made me squirm in my seat a little bit and really feel uncomfortable in a good way. But for those of you who've seen The Help, you know what I'm talking about. So the Bryce Dallas Howard character is, for all intents and purposes, one of the antagonists of the film. She's not a mustache-twirling villain or anything like that, but she's kind of the representation of the things that the characters like Octavia Spencer's character were working against. And what had coming against them was characters like Bryce Dallas Howard. There's a moment in the film where I believe it's the Emma Stone character and the Bryce Dallas Howard character. And the Bryce Dallas Howard character says this, and who is clearly a racist character. But she says, believing that she's saying something caring about the Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer characters, the Bryce Dallas Howard character says, you don't get it. There are real racists out there who will do this, 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 and this. And it was such a profound moment to me because for me as the audience member, her character was clearly very racist. But in her eyes, she wasn't. There were other people out there who were racist and they're bad people. And it just, I remember the juxtaposition of that whole internal monologue that character is having, the obliviousness that character has to what her actual behavior is versus how she sees and perceives herself in relation to the events going on. I remember me, once again, as a Canadian pasty white Italian dude, sitting there and going, whoa. Like it spoke to, I think, to me, and this is, the great movies make you think. Whatever conclusions you come to, the great movies make you think. And I remember thinking to myself, damn, man, like me, everybody, we all have to be, we should never rest on our laurels. We should always be examining ourselves. Because here's a great example of a person who's carrying some attitudes that probably a lot of us do and don't even realize it. And that was profound to me as well. The bravery of the Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis character. The fact, and you know, some people criticize The Help with the Emma Stone character as, some people criticize it as a white savior movie, but I can only tell you my experience with it. My experience when I was watching the movie was, the message of it was that it's not that Emma Stone's character wasn't the hero of the movie, nor was she the savior. To me, and the reason why I thought it was important to tell the story through that character's observations and what she's seeing around her, to me, the message of the Emma Stone character was that, listen, this isn't just their problem. This isn't just, you know, Octavia Spencer's character's problem. This is a society problem. And for society to change, it's going to take a lot of people in society to step up and help make that change. And so, to me, the message of the Emma Stone character was, don't think you can just sit this out because you don't think this is your issue too. It is. And it's something that we all need to get involved with and get on board with, particularly in that time period, but I think it applies today as well. So it made me re-examine. It made me decide to re-examine my own thought processes, something that I think I still and everybody still needs to do every day. It made me realize that this is not just the problem of one people group. Because when it's affecting one people group, when one group of our culture is badly being hurt, it hurts our whole culture. And it takes people outside of just the one people group being affected to step up as well and join in and join hands. Anyway, that was the message to me. And it was done in such a great way that I just remember I stood outside of that screening room on the movie theater lot, or the studio lot, just taking deep breaths going, I just adored that movie. It was the type of movie that makes me love the movies. So once again, let me just run through these three one more time that I would recommend as somebody who is not an expert in Cuban cuisine. The Help, I Am Not Your Negro, and Remember the Titans. Those, now there are many. I mean, I didn't even mention one of my favorites, Do the Right Thing. We didn't even mention Fruitvale Station. We didn't even mention Loving. There's a lot of great ones, but you know, for me to just keep it relatively short, those are the three that I want to talk about. Let me ask you guys a question. Given today's environment and things that are going on in the world, what would you, if somebody came to you and said, hey, what are three good movies that I should watch that will make me more, or that would encourage more empathy from me? What three movies would those be for you? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right. With that down, guys, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Michelle Alexandria. Well, hello, Michelle. Thanks for being here. And Michelle writes, will AMC need to change their A-List program to stay afloat? If so, what changes would you recommend or think they'll implement? It's always been too good to be true. And in this current climate, I don't think we can expect the same level at the same price. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, Michelle. And yeah, that's been one of the big questions that a lot of people have been wondering about. When the theaters do open, and we know that AMC's in a lot of trouble right now. All the movie theaters are. When the theaters reopen, what can we expect from theaters like AMC with their A-List, like Regal with their Regal Unlimited plan, or others? Alamo Drafthouse has their own program and plan now. Cinemark has their own program. What can we expect for those? Will those disappear? I have written to people at AMC to ask that question, and I've received no response. So all I can give you is my analysis of it and what I think they'll do, but what they ultimately will do, we're just going to have to wait and see. Here's what I think they're going to do. What I think they're going to do and what I think they need to do, and I think they know this, is you absolutely have to maintain A-List. Listen, AMC spent so much money getting the AMC A-List program up, running, getting their subscriber base up to critical numbers, to the point that just before the quarantine hit, just before the pandemic hit, AMC A-List was turning profit for AMC. They were starting to reap the rewards of all that work they had done of establishing and setting up and getting memberships and all that kind of stuff for their AMC A-List. I would kind of recommend and suggest that AMC can't afford to get rid of A-List. They have invested so much money, so many resources into that program that they cannot afford to lose it now. They can't afford that. The other thing, the second reason that I would say they can't afford to do it is because of this. There's going to be a slow process. I think most of us would agree. There's going to be a slow process in understanding we need to entice audiences back into the movie theaters. That is going to be their number one priority. What do we need to do to entice moviegoers back into our movie theaters? That's job mission number one. First thing they need to do, make sure audiences feel safe coming to our facilities. We're implementing new cleaning protocols, hand sanitizer for all our guests. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. They got to do things, number one, to make sure that potential audiences feel comfortable coming back into their theaters. The second thing, though, is they've got to use A-List. If the first thing you got to do is to entice people back into the movie theaters, the way not to do it is to say, oh, that movie membership program you had that you love using that gets you to come to our theaters, we're going to kill it. We're going to axe it. I don't think that's the way that they're going to entice people back. They need to do that because you also got to remember this. As a movie theater chain, AMC doesn't make its money on movie tickets. That's not how they make their money. They make their money on people coming into the building and buying popcorn and buying M&Ms and buying terrible movie theater nachos and buying soda and buying Twizzlers or Red Vine. I'm not going to discriminate if you're a Twizzler house or a Red Vine house, but that's how they make their money. So they need to get these people back into the theaters. The AMC A-List members are probably your first line and your first wave of people who will be willing to come back to the theaters. You cannot get rid of it. My thoughts on this is AMC cannot afford, either because of the initial investment they already put in or the fact that they need this program to help entice people back to the theaters. They cannot afford to not come back with, to fail to come back with A-List. They can't afford it. They have to come back with A-List. And I believe, and I could be dead wrong about this, A-List is going to be pivotal in that process of getting people back into the movie theaters. Because listen, when AMC opens back up, let's say it opens back up 2 weeks before July 17th. Let's say it opens back up beginning of July. And they're playing Onward, and they're playing Invisible Man, and they're playing The Gentleman. All movies that I've already seen, all movies that are already available for home video viewing. You know, I'm probably not going to want to go to the theaters and drop $12. Oh, let's face it, I would. I would still go and drop $10. But a lot of people wouldn't want to go and drop 10 or $12 to go and see those again. But hey, guess what? If you're an A-List member and you just want to get back into the movie theater, you may go and buy some popcorn. It's about the process. So good idea or bad idea, I just don't think AMC can afford to not come back with AMC A-List. I don't think Regal can afford to come back without Regal Unlimited. So I'm guessing, and it's only a guess, I'm guessing those programs will still be there, especially will still be there when the movie theaters open back up again. Again, I say that with no insider information. I never heard from anybody at AMC that said one way or the other. That's simply my guess of it all, breaking down the information that we have, but that's my thoughts. Question is, guys, what do you think is going to happen when these theaters start to reopen? Do you think theaters like Regal, like AMC, with these movie membership programs, are they going to come back with those membership programs intact? Or are they going to go, hey, listen, we have to suspend these programs because we can't afford to run them right now? Do you think maybe they'll do that? We'll find out soon enough. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all that down and out of the way, we're now going to move on and start taking your live questions. We're going to do that for the rest of the morning now. How do you get a comment or question into the live part of the show? It's really rather simple. You simply use the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video. If you just look in the description, the very first thing you'll see is that tip link. Just click on that. It's at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. And we will get through all of the questions that get sent in here today because, hey, we're just going into the weekend. But before we get to those questions, guys, as I do every day, I'm going to take just a short break here. I'm going to go refill the drink, rest the vocal cords for a second, stretch the old legs, give you a chance to run and use the bathroom. So if you will hang tight and be patient, my folks, don't go anywhere. I will be right back. Back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as I took a little bit of a break there. And now let's jump over and start getting to your live questions. And we're going to start off here today with Henri Mertens, who writes, in the original novel, Forrest Gump also joins NASA, goes to space with a monkey, and crash lands on a planet full of cannibals. Like you always say, a director should simply make the best movie possible. Some things just work better in the book. Is that true? I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even realize there was a Forrest Gump book. I didn't even realize there was a Forrest Gump book. Is that actually true? That he goes into space and he crash lands on a planet full of cannibals? Yeah. Okay, listen, if that's true, that is a great example of, listen, the job of a director is not to make as faithful as possible to the book. No, the job of the director is make the best movie possible. That would not have worked in that movie. That would not have worked in that movie. That's a good example of some adaptation. All right, thanks a lot for saying. Again, I've never heard of that before. I had no idea. Thank you for sharing that with me. I learned something new every day from you guys. All right, next up, 50 Shades of Geek writes, I haven't tipped the show in a while. No problem, 50. Just glad you're here joining us. Been busy. Just want to say thank you for the way you're handling everything, what's going on, and you shouldn't feel bad about how you handled the news of your friend last month. You did better than most people would. Well, I appreciate that. That was, and of course, he's referring to a few weeks ago, I got some fairly terrible news as we were doing the show. Yeah, that happened. But thank you very much, 50 Shades. I'm thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that very, very much, my man. All right. 50 Shades also writes, last week was my mom's birthday and I got Neil McDonough. I love Neil McDonough. Damien Dark, of course, from the Arrowverse, when he's in like a million other movies. To sing happy birthday to her through Cameo. That's nice. She loves it. Next time you see Erin Cummings, please thank her for letting me know about that website. I will indeed. And actually, for those of you who don't know, Cameo is a really cool app where it's basically there's a whole bunch of sports and television and movie celebrities on Cameo. And you can pay a fee and have that person, that sports, whatever, YouTuber, television star, movie, whatever, send a personal message to somebody for you. I actually had, hold a second, I keep forgetting the name of the show. Hold a second. I think it's 911. His name is show. She was from in Party of Five. What's the actress's name? Why am I forgetting her name? She was the actress in Party of Five. I thought she was in 911. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Jennifer Love Hewitt. So Jennifer Love Hewitt is on Cameo. And a friend of mine is a huge, Jennifer Love Hewitt is my buddy's celebrity crush. So I was able to go on Cameo and get Jennifer Love Hewitt to record a video message to send to my buddy. And it was really cool. And it was really great. I have never, ever, 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 ever mentioned this on the show, but I'm actually on Cameo. Here's the thing. I get a number of Cameos requests sent to me every single week, and I'm always amazed that I do because I have never mentioned on this show that I'm on Cameo. I've never said on any of my social media that I'm on Cameo. I've never mentioned it to anybody, and yet somehow, some way, 10, 15 times a month, I get hit up on Cameo to send somebody a message on somebody's behalf. So I guess this is the first time saying, if you want me to send a message to somebody, I have no idea why you'd want me to send a message to somebody. But if you do, I am on Cameo. You can go on Cameo and find me there. Of course, Erin Cummings is on there. But yeah, you can get somebody like Neil McDonough to go and send a message to somebody for you. And that is a great use of that platform. All right. Thanks for sending that in, 50 Shades. All right. Willow writes, do you have a rule on how many episodes you give a TV show to decide whether you'll continue watching or tap out? I really don't, because, for instance, there are shows I give 1 or 2 episodes and I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. I'm out. But then there's a show like Legends of Tomorrow, which I watched on the fence for 2 full seasons, maybe more than, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3 seasons. I watched on the fence for seasons. I'd watch it okay, it's not great, but it's not bad. I'll watch another episode. And then I'd watch the next episode. Okay, it's not great, but it's not bad. I'll watch another episode. And I did that for 2 or 3 years with Legends of Tomorrow. And then finally I tapped out on it. It's this just isn't that good. But it took me years to do that. Then there are other shows that's nah, this isn't working for me, and I tap out. So I actually don't have any kind of set rules. I give every show Because, like, for instance, if there's a show that's on and I watch the first episode and I hate it, why would I use my time to watch 2 more episodes? Well, because I have a rule, 3 episodes. No. I think you got to play it by ear. I mean, some other people may have a rule, and if that works for you, great. For me, I got to play it show by show. Because, for instance, I gave Stargirl 2 episodes. I mean, I knew I didn't like the first episode. Even though it starts off really cool, the beginning of Stargirl is really cool. But then it, to me, really fast. Even though it's got some people in it I love, like Amy Smart and Luke Wilson. Love these people. Joel McHale is in it to a degree. But I knew I didn't like it, but I'm like, okay, it's a CW show, and I'm a big superhero and sci-fi geek, so I'll give it another one. Even though I really didn't like the first episode after the first 10 minutes, I'll give it another one. I watched another one. I'm like, okay, yeah, and I'm out. And I tapped out. And then there's a show like Legends of Tomorrow that I went for seasons. So no hardcore rule for me. No hardcore rule. I take each show by show. All right, Dartlock63 writes, 2 movies where I prefer the extended cuts are The Abyss and Aliens. The Abyss extended cut is actually pretty cool. And Aliens, it would have been awesome to see the tidal wave sequence in The Abyss on the big screen. Here's why I don't say that I prefer it. With The Abyss, although it is very cool. I don't know how I would have enjoyed it if all that stuff was a part of my initial viewing of The Abyss. I just don't know how I would respond to it if that was a part of my initial viewing. I thought all the extra stuff was really cool to see as somebody who was already a fan of the movie. So that's why I hesitate to say that I prefer that extended cut of The Abyss. It's the same thing like Lord of the Rings. I really like all the extra stuff that's in the Lord of the Rings extended editions. But for me, the theatrical editions are still the definitive Lord of the Rings stories. You know what I mean? And as somebody who's a fan of the original releases, I can really appreciate all the extra stuff that's in the extended editions. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong for feeling that way. I'm just saying, you know, that's me. That's how I feel. By the way, I meant to show you guys something. I'll save it for tomorrow. There's something I'm going to share with you guys in the show tomorrow. I don't know why I forgot, but I just remembered something I wanted to share with you guys, but I'll share it on the open mic show tomorrow. But yeah, anyway, that's where I'm on that. But those are 2 good ones. Dark Lock, those are 2 good ones. All right, next up, Kevin Lewis writes, JC, here's how you can stuff your butterhole with popcorn and not cough up your filthy on people in the theater. Have you seen these? Well, I have seen people do. Yes, I've seen people realize or suggest this. These welder style clear plastic shields for $5. It has space for your chin where you can sneak in food and solves the eat with a mask problem. I saw somebody do a video on YouTube about that, saying, hey, when you're in the movie theater. And because I see people walking around on the streets, instead of wearing like a regular mask, they wear like a face shield. And that's interesting. But I saw somebody do a YouTube video on this where they had the face shield. They showed that they still have room to bring their hand up under and slip the straw up under and do all that. Not a bad idea. Must admit, I'd feel kind of ridiculous wearing that. I mean, I'd rather just have my face mask on and just go, or, you know, as I'm stuffing my ridiculous face. With popcorn and soda and things like that. But I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'd probably look at other people in the theater if they were doing that and go, that's actually probably a pretty good idea. I just don't know. I'd feel so ridiculous wearing it. Then again, I feel ridiculous walking around with the face that I was born with. But hey, it is what it is. Okay, next up, Jake C writes, did they confirm the Snyder Cut was 3.5 to 4 hours long? Or is that what fans assume since most assembly cuts are really long like that? If his assembly cut is that long right now, I have to imagine as a filmmaker, he'd want to trim the fat after post-production. Well, here's what was confirmed. In that Hollywood, remember, right as they announced the Snyder Cut, the Hollywood Reporter did a sit down and they talked to Zack and Deborah Snyder. And there was a lot of really interesting things revealed in that interview. One of the things revealed in that interview was that the first cut that Zack Snyder had was, to quote the article, was almost 4 hours long. But even for Zack Snyder, that was just his first cut of the film, right? Now, he knew, it says in the article, that he could never release that. That was never going to fly in theaters. He knew that, but that was his first cut of his movie. Then Another cut that he did, which was the cut he showed to the Warner Brothers executives at the time, was, I believe they said 2 hours and 20 minutes, was the cut that he then took and showed them 2 hours and 20 minutes. So no, there is no confirmation that it will be 3.5 to 4 hours long. But here's my guess. My guess is that HBO Max wants to suckle as much benefit out of this as possible. I believe they're going to turn this into a limited series, 4, 5, 6 episodes. And doing that, I think it stands to reason they will go back to that first edit he did. And they'll do all the post-production, they'll do all the CGI, and they'll do all that kind of stuff on that first edit he did. Because HBO Max, the longer it is, see, unlike a theatrical release, because, you know, Warner Brothers would never want a 4-hour theatrical, but unlike a theatrical release, the more content in there, the better it is for the streaming service. If HBO Max can drag this thing out for 5 weeks instead of just one, there, we dropped it event, they would love that. So my guess is, I think it stands to reason they'll go with that first initial cut that he did of his edit, as opposed to the second cut he did of his edit that was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think HBO would want it to be longer so they could chop it up into multiple episodes across a wider period of time. That's my guess, but no, the direct answer to your question is it is not confirmed. That's not confirmed. There's some information that we know, but we do not know, nor has it been confirmed, that the conclusion of all that information is that it will indeed be 4 hours long. We don't know that. I'm just thinking that's a pretty safe guess. Just a guess, but a pretty safe guess at this point. All right, the Wakandan Forever writes, "Hey John, don't get nervous. What is your favorite Weird Al song and video?" Oh, I think about that sometimes. I love Eat It, and the White and Nerdy is awesome. White and Nerdy video makes me laugh every single time. The only thing that I find hard is, do I like Kirk or do I like Picard? I mean, it's so good. And White and Nerdy. Anyway, White and Nerdy video makes me laugh every time. I saw him live in concert years ago. We all need a smile. Look up some of his videos. It helps. Weird Al is, by the way, one of his more recent ones that he did a couple years ago was Tacky, which was a spoof on Because I'm Happy. He does one called Because I'm Tacky, and the video is brilliant. The video is brilliant. White and Nerdy is an awesome video. Amish Paradise, which is a spoof on Gangster's Paradise. Churn butter once or twice, living in an Amish paradise. Anyway, it's a great video. You go back to some of his older stuff too, whether it's Eat It. God, he's got a lot of really, really good ones. I think I'd have to go White and Nerdy. Actually, I have a big hoodie. I don't put it on very much because it's warm in LA, but I got a big hoodie that just says White and Nerdy on it. I'll bust it out sometime. I just got this giant hoodie. So I'll go towards White and Nerdy as my favorite one of his, at least as far as videos go. All right. But as far as pure songs go, not one of his more popular ones. It's an original love song. That's funny, but it's an original song. It's not a spoof on another song. It's called You're Not Perfect, But You're Good Enough for Now. It's a love song you sing into a girl, but the chorus, the bass chorus is, "You're not perfect, but you're good enough for now." I don't know. I just find to me that's his most hilarious song. I love that one. Anyway, Wakanda Forever also writes, "I am not a role-playing guy, but I played Pathfinder, which was based on the original Dungeons & Dragons rules. I played a Pathfinder once, and it was really fun. I am interested in learning about Dungeons & Dragons. What is your character class and name? Also, do you have any advice for a complete beginner interested in the game?" Well, actually, I will show you if I can bring this up. Let me see if I can get this up here. I went the character I'm currently playing is a very, very basic vanilla kind of character. But my character right now is a character called Darwin, who is just a human ranger. That's my dude right now. Darwin is my human ranger name, and that's the character that I am playing right now. There's my character sheet. I prefer there. See that book right there? That's the basic rules for the Star Wars role-playing game. Not the current game, but the classic West End Games D6 Star Wars role-playing game. It is my all-time favorite role-playing game. That's my favorite one to play. The best advice I would give to somebody who is trying to get started who wants to try out a role-play, because role-playing games are an incredible hoot. They're the best. I play a lot of games on my computer and stuff like that, but nothing compares to actually sitting at a table. Right now, we've got to do it over Zoom, and that's fine. But nothing compares to sitting at a table with 4, 5, 6, 7 friends with dice and your character sheet, and you're actually like playing this game together. But here's the biggest piece of advice I would give to somebody who wants to get started out. Don't worry about the rules. Honestly, don't worry about the rules. Let the game master worry about the rules. You honestly don't have to worry about the rules. Don't be worried about them. Just tell the game master what it is you want to do. And the game master will tell you if that's something you can do or not. And if there's something you like, I want to take a drink of water. Okay, your character takes a drink of water. Okay, now I want to shoot a bow and arrow through 3 windows and hit something on a tree that's 80 yards away. Okay, there's a chance of failure for that, so you're going to have to make a dice roll for it, and the dungeon master or the game master will tell you which one of your skills will dictate how many dice you get to roll, which dice you get to roll, and how high you've got to roll, and they'll be able to do it. So a lot of people I find get intimidated away from the idea of playing role-playing games because they see these books that are like this thick. Like I've shown some of my you know what? This is actually a good example of this. Let me grab this for a second. Okay, so here I have, I'm going to be giving away some of these. I just haven't figured out how to do a giveaway. I've got a bunch of these Dungeons & Dragons Essential Starter Kits, right? That has everything you need to get started in playing a game of D&D. I also got some like really cool metal dice and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to figure out a good way to do a giveaway because I've got like 4 or 5 of these essential kits here that I want to give away to some viewers. I'll figure out a good way to do a giveaway for it. So, and then you guys will get some, but don't worry about the rules. Don't worry about these thick books. Don't worry about it. The essentials of a good role-playing game is just play the adventure. Just play the adventure. If you're going to try to do something that has a chance of failure, you're going to have to make a dice roll, and your game master will tell you which dice you have to roll and how high you have to roll. It's all good. So just don't worry about it. Just get in there. Just start playing. I'm telling you, it's seriously one of the most fun things. I got hooked on playing D&D when I was like 14. And I played D&D, I played different role-playing games, whether it's DC Heroes is another game I really, really liked playing, whether it's Star Wars RPG. I've been playing role-playing games since I was like 14 years old. It is seriously like one of the most fun, enjoyable, really cool things to do. I highly encourage people to get involved in doing them if you have any interest in it at all. All right, next up, especially this Star Wars role-playing game. Star Wars West End Games, the West End Games version of it, the D6 West End Games Star Wars role-playing game. Still the best role-playing game I've ever played. All right, Justin writes, John, it has finally happened. Funko Pop announced that they are releasing pop figures from the Fox X-Men universe, really, for its 20th anniversary. I'll tell you what, I didn't even realize they didn't have them. I didn't even realize that. Oh my God, it's been 20 years since I know, right? It's been 20 years since the first X-Men film. I just pre-ordered my Ian McKellen Magneto and Fassbender Magneto Pops. Yeah, that's going to be some more money coming out of my wallet. I love those original X-Men films. Particularly X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. I love those movies. And obviously some of the later ones too, but oh man, I love those movies. I'm going to have to make some more room on my shelves to get some of those. I did, but I didn't even realize that was the case. But yeah, now that you mention it, I've never seen an Ian McKellen Magneto. And when I go into one of these shops and I see that on the shelf, you know I'm buying them. I'm absolutely going to buy them. Thanks for the info, Justin. All right. Next up, Condor Man writes, what do you think the future of Cyborg is in the DCEU? If the Snyder Cut is successful, do you think we'll get the Cyborg film? No. He be featured in other films, or is the character done? Thought Fisher was good in the role and hope we see more of him. Yeah, I think Fisher has said himself that it's done. But listen, this is Hollywood. anything can happen. George Lucas, after Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, said definitively there will not be an Indiana Jones 4. All right? He said definitively there's not going to be another Indiana Jones movie. Guess what? Eventually we got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There you go. So look, the information we have right now is no. Don't count on there being at least not Fisher's Cyborg. Don't expect to see Fisher's Cyborg ever again. That said, if Lucas said there would never be another Indiana Jones movie, and here we are. We're getting ready for another one, if it ever happens, and I'm not sure that it will, but never say never, but given the information we have right now, don't expect that. Don't expect that, at least not anytime soon, but anything can change. All right, next up. Wakanda Forever writes, Black Panther / King T'Challa says, Clint, give it to me. We can accomplish great things when we acknowledge each other and work together. My film recommendation today is Avengers Endgame. Black Panther is in it, so it counts, John. Everyone stay safe. Thanks. That is one of the really cool moments, because what I liked about that moment, the whole, portal sequence is filled with it's just a collection of a lot of really cool moments, right? I love that moment because it was a very direct callback to when, of course, Hawkeye and Black Panther first confronted each other in Civil War. And the words of T'Challa to Clint is, I don't care. And they go at it, right? And then it's a very different circumstances. So they're doing these callbacks to other moments and it's filled that. And that is actually one of the really good ones. All right, next up, Daniel Haygood writes, I'd be totally okay foregoing A-list benefits for a few months. I'll still buy a bunch of concessions too. Still though, maybe they just modify it to some lower cost benefits and just keep it around. It's distinct and was successful. Yeah, I don't know that you can do that. I don't think you can tell people that you got to buy into your program and then take benefits away. I think long-term that would really hurt them. Plus, I think at any rate, and I could be wrong. I currently think though, that maintaining those benefits will be beneficial to the theaters because it's going to be more enticing to get more and more people back into the theaters. Because not everybody's going to come rushing back to the theaters. A bunch of people will, but a bunch of people are going to be very understandably cautious about it. So everything they can do to make people feel comfortable coming back to the theaters, and that includes all the benefits that are on A-List, I think they got to keep. But you never know, Daniel. You may be right, man. All right, Superman Steve writes, Hey, John, my local cinema has Dolby Atmos, and they are not opening again until Tenet. So it's going to be the first blockbuster to reopen all of our cinemas. It kind of sucks, but I totally understand why they are going to wait. Yeah, I get that too. And remember, it is still possible that Warner Brothers delays Tenet. Nothing has guaranteed it. Nothing has locked it in stone. Nothing has cast it in iron. There have been whispers for weeks that Warner Brothers is actually, they want to keep the July 17th, but they probably will end up moving it. There's been whispers about that for a long time. And maybe that'll happen. I personally think they will keep the 17th date, but you just don't know. You just don't know. But hopefully they can reopen it with Tenet and we can have the Dolby Atmos experience, the Prime experience, all these experiences with it. And it's going to be a day I am very much looking forward to, Superman Steve. All right, next up, Ryan Trabucco writes, Happy Friday, John. Thank you so much, Ryan. Moved into a new place this week, and it didn't feel like home without a couple of cases of Zevia Cola. I've got some Zevia right here. Also picked up some Zevia cream soda and ginger ale. If anyone from Zevia is listening, you should really sponsor the John Campea Show. Indeed you do. Of course, that's the new slogan of the John Campea Show. Zevia Cola, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. But to be honest, I am drinking a Zevia Cola right now that they did send me. I've talked about Zevia Cola for so long on my show. I don't know if all of you know this. I've been talking about the fact that I drink Zevia Cola for so long on my show that a little bit ago, a rep from Zevia Cola actually reached out to me and said, "Hey man, we heard you mention we're so glad you like our soda. We're gonna send you a case. We're gonna send you a full case of Zevia Cola," which I very much appreciated. And I kept looking in the email for where's the part where you want to sponsor me for, $1.5 million a year? Where's that part in the email? I kept looking. Is it there? I can't see it. Let me open it again and look at it again. That wasn't there. But I was very, very grateful for the free case. And as a matter of fact, they just sent me 2 more free cases. So I've been talking about Zevia for years, but I am, and yes, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. But I do love it. I am very, very happy with this. I drink it on the show every day. And I'm very grateful for them sending me a couple of cases because that does save me some money. So thank you guys. And I do recommend you guys try it out. It's no calories. It has none of the really crappy for you artificial sweeteners I love Diet Pepsi, but it's filled with those artificial sweeteners, not good for you. So I try not to drink it too often, but it's the best of all the worlds. So I do recommend you giving it a shot. All right. Thanks for that, Ryan. All right. Next up, Chris Warden writes, I just rewatched Boogie Nights and I totally forgot. Oh, dude, that cast is loaded. I totally forgot just how loaded with names that cast was. Not only did it make Mark Wahlberg a megastar, but was also the big break for Heather Graham, John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Thomas Jane. Oh, and don't forget about Turd Ferguson. Burt Reynolds, man. Don't forget Burt Reynolds in there. That cast is stacked. It's a totally filthy movie as well. But I still remember when I watched it, I was just so taken with the fact that the big song that Mark Wahlberg sings in it is the song from the Transformers, the animated movie. You got the touch. You got the power. I'm like, that's the freaking Transformers song. And I got mad at the movie because they weren't acknowledging that it was in Transformers. But it is what it is. But yes, Chris, that movie, Boogie Nights, it's an incredible film. It's really good. It does have a lot of filthy, yes, but it's an incredible movie with an incredible cast. So that's a really good one. It's been a while. It's been a beat since I've seen that one too. I got to go back and watch that one soon. All right. Ponder Question writes, 1 of 2. Come on, John. Are you really going to wear a mask when watching Tenet at the same time, lifting it down every second to save your buttery flavored popcorn? Absolutely, I am. And sipping your Coke Zero. Every second you do, you are always exposing those next to you. Just have the theater limit capacity or go to a showtime that's late at night or early in the afternoon or on a weekday. You'll be fine. The movie going experience is not complete without some snacks, period. Maybe we'll sanitize our mouths while we eat. See, here's the thing though. Listen, social distancing. If you are limiting look, there's nothing you can do other than putting on a hazmat suit. There is nothing you can do to guarantee 100% that you are immune. And if you happen to have it and don't even realize it, that you can't pass it on to somebody else. There is no 100% ironclad guarantee, but there are things we can do to minimize the chances that we spread it to other people or get it ourselves. There are smart things we can do to reduce the risk. Wearing a condom during sex does not guarantee you won't get an STD, but it reduces the risk, right? It reduces the risk. And if everybody, without guarantees, does things to reduce the risk, we're going to be in a much better place. So I'll give you an example. I went to an outdoor patio to have something to eat the other day, and they had it so that only certain tables were open outside, even though it was outside. I had nobody sitting at any of the tables around me, so there'd always be at least one full table between me and anybody else. And a lot of them, they were wearing masks. And yeah, they would pull it down when they'd be eating something and whatever, but they were limiting the amount of time that they were doing that, thus limiting the risk or reducing the risk. There is nothing we can do to absolutely eliminate all risk. But I am all for doing anything that minimizes the risk, that reduces risk. So, look, everybody can have their own opinion on that. I'm not trying to tell other people what to think. You can have your own opinion on that. But if you're asking me what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it, yeah, listen, if you add up all the time, if you had a stopwatch and timed every time I take a sip of a soda or put some popcorn in my mouth, the entire time will probably max about 10 minutes. So yes, maybe about 10 minutes with nobody sitting beside me because they're going to have social distancing in the theater. So they're not going to have people sitting right beside each other. Without other people sitting right beside me, I'll have my mask down for a minute or two, and then I'll have it on for the rest of the time. And remember, the way COVID-19 spreads, and I am no medical expert, but remember, that one NBA player had it. I think he was on the Jazz. That one Utah Jazz player had it. And he was in the locker room with his teammates, right? He was in the locker room with his teammates. He was on the court practicing with his teammates. He was doing all that kind of stuff. And I think only one other guy got it. Now, that's not to say, therefore, there's no risk. Of course there's risk. But it's not like if you pull down your mask for 1 second, it's not like the movie Contagion where now you've exposed everybody in the theater to it, right? It's not quite that either. But I just think do smart little things. But look, and I could be way off in that. I am no medical expert, so I don't want to sound as if I think I am. I'm not. I'm just going by whatever information I've read, just like everybody is. I'm just doing the best that I can. And I just think if we all made little decisions to reduce risk, we'll all be in a much better place. But that's just my thought on that. That's just my thought on that, Pondered. Thanks for sharing the thoughts, man. All right. Murray Reich writes, there may be hope after all for New York City theaters opening on time for Tenet. According to the New York governor, day camps can be opened by June 29th. Anything is possible. I'm pretty optimistic right now. Well, see, that's the thing too. To me, going into a grocery store is a riskier proposition than going into a movie theater. Going into a restaurant is a much riskier proposition than going into a movie theater. And I think if we feel comfortable that we have processes in place that we can go into the grocery store with limited risk and with proper safety procedures, if we can go into restaurants where they had to have processes in place to limit the risk and to increase safety measures, if you can do that there, where I think it's more risky, I don't see why you can't do that at the movie theater. Especially like a restaurant, low ceiling, like a 7-8 foot high ceiling, theater, 40-foot ceiling, all that, lots of space around you. I don't know. It just feels to me, and I could be wrong, it feels to me like going into a grocery store and going into a restaurant is a riskier proposition than going into a theater. So if they can open up restaurants because they feel pretty confident about safety procedures, if they can open up grocery stores because they feel more confident because of safety procedures, I don't see why that can't be applied to movie theaters. Just my thought. Again, a thought that could be completely wrong. I'm just saying that's the thought that I have right now. All right. But good for being optimistic, Murray. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, oh my God, I just read up that protesters broke into the Falcons stadium and stole the Super Bowl trophy. Never mind. I have not heard that. And I've looked at all the news sources. I have not heard that. I'll look into that though. I'll put an eye on that and see if that's true. Oh my gosh. If somebody's running around in there, of course it would be a replication of it. So I'm sure that would be the case, but I'll have to look into that. All right. Next up, Paddington 2's Oscar. Paddington 2 is such a great movie. I'm not going to lie. I like it so much. I'm not going to sit here and say it should have been nominated for Best Picture, but if Paddington 2 had been nominated for Best Picture, I wouldn't have blinked. It's seriously that good. Like Paddington 2 is seriously that good. Anyway, I agree that Heaven Sent is the best. You're the third person to write in to talk about this episode of Doctor Who. I agree that Heaven Sent is the best episode of Doctor Who, but a bad one to start with. It requires context, especially being a season finale. Here are the best episodes to introduce you without needing context. 1, Blink. 2, Midnight. 3, Vincent and the Doctor. I will keep that in mind. Like, I don't watch Doctor Who. Right? So this has been a running thing here. I don't watch Doctor Who, but I've had a few people write in and say, hey man, you should watch it. And you can start with this. Like a lot of people said to me that Heaven Sent is like their favorite episode of television ever. And it's on Doctor Who and you should watch that. And I'm going to try it at some point. At some point, even though I don't watch Doctor Who, I will try that at some point. I'm not saying I don't like Doctor Who. I'm just saying I don't watch it. That's all. All right. Chris Warden writes, also, am I the only one who's not sold on O'Shea Jackson as an actor yet? No, I'm with you. I'm not quite sold on him yet. I think he was quite good playing his dad in Straight Outta Compton. Well, he was great playing his dad. But of course he grew up with that. But he was great in that movie. I thought he did a really good job playing his dad in Straight Outta Compton, but I feel his line delivery in Long Shot and Godzilla King of the Monsters seemed kind of forced. There's another one he did too with, why am I freezing on 300 Boys name? Gerard Butler. There's a movie he did with Gerard Butler that's kind of a Point Break kind of movie that where Gerard Butler's a cop. Hold on a second. What's the name of the movie? It is called Den of Thieves. That's it. So O'Shea Jackson was, and actually Den of Thieves isn't bad. It just had the potential to be a lot better. O'Shea Jackson is in Den of Thieves with Gerard Butler. This is a look at the movie. Actually, a really good poster. I like the poster personally. Not a bad movie. Not a bad movie. O'Shea Jackson wasn't bad in it. If you want to get another movie to get a little bit more of a sample size of O'Shea Jackson, Ice Cube's kid, that's another one you might want to check out. He's actually not bad in that one. But you're right. I am with you. Aside from Straight Outta Compton, where he was playing his dad, I'm not totally sold on him yet. But he's got, I think Straight Outta Compton and I think Den of Thieves shows he's got potential. I think both of those shows he has potential. So we will see. We'll see how that goes. All right. Next up, Mr. TJ Lynn writes, I once said that I do not appreciate loudness and sports-like crowds and audiences on opening weekends of major movies like the MCU or the DCU. Well, it depends on where you're from, TJ, because I think there are countries where they kind of frown on that. In North America, we kind of encourage that. But at any rate, there's an exception for me. Harry Potter films. I'm very biased because I'm a big Potterhead. And that's fine. You do you, TJ. But yeah, I got to say, I personally... I mean, it depends on the movie, right? Like, I'm not going into Schindler's List, and I don't want to hear a lot of laughter. People, yeah! Like, I don't want to hear that in a Schindler's List. But I am the type of guy that I really enjoy a rowdy, sports-like atmosphere in a movie. Like, there's something really cool, whether you're at a Star Wars opening weekend, or a DC opening weekend, or a Marvel film opening weekend, or something like that, where you're in the theater and you can just feel the buzz in the theater, right? Like the lights haven't gone down yet. The movie hasn't started, but you can feel the energy. You can feel it in there. People are just ready to pop, right? And then the opening title comes up on the screen. The audience, yeah, I just love that. I get goosebumps thinking about, look at the hair on my arm is standing up now. I get goosebumps thinking about that. I get major, major goosebumps thinking about that. I love that. But you know, then I got a lot of our viewers in the UK who write, say, actually, we don't do that in the UK. In the UK, we don't do cheering and whelping and whatever in our audiences. I'm like, well, to each their own. You know, we all like to experience movies in different ways. I kind of like that energy and excitement. But even you, TJ, when you get into a movie that is really up your alley, like a Harry Potter, even you got to give into it a little bit, right? I love the movies. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, man. You know what? By the way, Ann and I just sat down and watched Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, like last week. Our buddy was over and we were just like, let's watch something. And because we were in Los Angeles and there was a curfew, so we couldn't go out anywhere. So we thought, let's put on something. And, you know, I hadn't seen that in a while. I still don't know why that movie gets such a hard time from people. I thought Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, I'm not a Potterhead or anything. I thought The Crimes of Grindelwald was quite good. I remember I liked it the first time I saw it. And I really liked it watching it again. I don't know why it gets a lot of people give that movie a hard time. I personally really quite enjoy it. Anyway, Carmelo Anthony, probably not the real one, writes, hey, John, there are some rumors that HBO Max is looking to bring, ignore those, is looking to bring back Affleck as Batman and go up against Deathstroke and Leto's Joker in a miniseries or movie. I would personally really like to see Leto's Joker go up against Affleck's Batman. Well, listen, as somebody, of course, Ben Affleck is my all-time favorite Batman, and I really did appreciate Jared Leto's Joker. I would love to see that, but here's the thing. That is coming from a non-reputable source. And by non-reputable, I just mean it's not from one of the real trades. That's not from Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety. It's not from any of the legitimate news sources. That doesn't automatically mean it's not true. Big distinction. That doesn't automatically mean it's not true, but it means it's not even worth talking about until it becomes more valid. Like because if that story is real, then guess what? Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, one of these places will report on it if there's legitimacy to it. It will come up. But 99 times out of 100, this type of stuff turns out to not be true. And so it's just not worth talking about. It's just not worth talking about. Because if it's real, then it will come up on the legitimate trades, and then it's worth talking about. Until then, it's really not worth speculating. Obviously, I would love it because I like Jared Leto's Joker. I love Ben Affleck's Batman. So I'd be down for it, but until I see something legitimate on it, it's not worth talking about. I mean, I don't blame the site. Hey, if there's a site that heard that, then talk about on your site that you heard it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just don't think that then becomes something that I should talk about or the rest of the community should talk about until there's some legitimacy given to it. That's why when I, on the very rare occasion that I like break something, I tell everybody, look, nobody else should run with this as a story because this is just me. I'm just telling you, my audience, what I heard, and here's blah, 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 blah. And I believe the same is true for other sites as well. So it's just not worth talking about. I wouldn't spare any thought. I wouldn't spare any time thinking about it until we hear something more legitimate. Because if it's true, it will come out that it's true. And then we can focus on it and talk about it. All right. Anyway, Mr. TJ Lynn writes, one of many great things about Harry Potter films is the list of impressive and amazing actors like Ralph Fiennes, Gary Oldman, Alan Rickman, Maggie Smith, Richard Harris, Helena B. Carter, etc. If you ask me, it's even more impressive than the MCU list. Maybe. Don't forget about Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is in there as well. A lot of really, really good people. Maybe. I don't know. See, here's the thing. The MCU made its stars. Right? The MCU made its stars for the most part. Yeah, you have, Anthony Hopkins and you have different people, Sir Ben Kingsley, and you have these other people who come along and then do that, much like they did with Harry Potter. I don't know. It's close. It's close. But yeah, never. And don't forget about Brendan Gleeson, who, Brendan Gleeson, who played Mad-Eyed Moody in the Harry Potter films. And he's in Paddington 2. And of course, he's Seamus in Braveheart. And he's just great in everything he's in. He's also Donald Gleason's father. Brendan Gleeson is Donald Gleason's, or General Hux, in the Star Wars sequels. That actor's name is Donald Gleason. His dad is Brendan Gleeson, who's like one of my favorite character actors in Hollywood of all time. So don't forget about him being in Harry Potter as well. You're absolutely right, though. It is an absolute stacked list of talent that appears in those Harry Potter movies. All right, Mr. TJ Lynn writes, last one. Do you think Hermione Granger should have ended up with Harry Potter rather than Ron Weasley? Absolutely not. 1000% no. Or do you, or you just don't care? LOL. J.K. Rowling thought she once considered that possibility. Nope. I think that would have been paint by numbers, cookie cutter, stereotypical thing. Oh, there's the main boy and there's the main girl, so they've got to end up together. I hate that notion. I hate that idea. I'm so glad they didn't do that and they went in a different direction. And instead, they focused on the fact that Hermione and Harry were friends. They're friends, and there's a magic to that friendship. But that's what it is. And I love the fact that her and Ron actually were the ones that ended up falling in love together and all that kind of stuff. So I know there's a lot of Potterheads that disagree with me, and that's fine. I love the fact that JK did not go the route of the stereotypical paint by numbers, do what every other movie does and have these two end up together. I'm so glad. I thought that was gutsy. But that's just me. Take that as somebody who's a non-Potterhead saying that. All right. Let's see. Mr. TJ Lynn also writes, even though he just said last one, you and I might disagree 30% of the time, including Man of Steel. Hey, we should. We're film fans. We're supposed to disagree. But when it comes to the greatest actor of all time, I couldn't agree more. Daniel Day-Lewis is the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. Why retire so early? That Timothy kid is great, but needs a lot of catching up. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Timothée Chalamet he is not Daniel Day-Lewis yet. I just don't see any other actor in Hollywood right now who's got the pure potential to be the next Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, we've seen look, Leonardo DiCaprio is awesome, but we've seen him peak. We know what he is capable of. We've seen how good he is. We have seen Chiwetel Ejiofor, how good he is. We know how good he can be, whatever. And neither one of those incredible performers are Daniel Day-Lewis. Timothée Chalamet, when I talk about him, I don't even know that he's not a top 5 actor in Hollywood right now or anything. I'm just telling you that this kid is just getting better and better and better and better. The fact that he is as good as he is right now, to me, is nothing short of scary. You may not love the movies he's been in, but the performances he gives, he is at this point in his career is nothing short of absolutely frightening how good he is at this point. And he's only getting better. So that's why when I talk about Timothée Chalamet, I'm saying he's got the potential to be the next Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't see anybody else. Honestly, right now, I don't see anybody else in the business that's got Daniel Day-Lewis type potential. This kid does. Whether or not he gets there, that's another question that needs to be answered over the course of the next 15 years. Whether or not he'll actually arrive at that and get there and be truly the next Daniel Day-Lewis. But I'm just saying, when I look around Hollywood today, I see a lot of great performers. I don't see anybody that has the potential that Timothée Chalamet has. I just don't see where the theoretical limit is on how good he can be right now. And maybe he'll realize that potential. Maybe he'll squander that potential. Don't know. We'll find out over the next few years, but that's kind of my thoughts on that right now. But yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is the Bret Hart of acting. He's the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, I think. But what time will tell. And yeah, it's too bad that he retired so early. But listen, he only did movies he wasn't like Dwayne Johnson, who does 4 movies a year. He did 1 movie every 3 years or something like that. Right? So he decided he's got all the money he wants. He's won all the Academy Awards. He's pretty much the GOAT. He is pretty much the greatest of all time. So he decided to hang him up, go back home and cobble shoes. I mean, good on him. I certainly hope he comes back someday, though. I really do, because he's just the best I've ever seen. All right. Let's see here. Russell Amador writes, "Hey, John, movie theaters down here in San Antonio have been open for a solid month or so." That's awesome. Yeah, Texas was the first place to start opening the theaters again. Down here for a solid month or so. They've been showing old movies and offering free tickets, but none of them seem to interest me. That changed today. Man of Steel is on the big screen. Dude, I'm telling you what. Oh my God. If they open a local theater around me and they play Man of Steel on the big screen, because it's been a lot of years since it's been a number of years since I've had a chance to see Man of Steel on the big screen, I would be there in a heartbeat. But you guys all know what I think of Man of Steel. So it is, but I'll be there in a heartbeat, man. That's awesome. That is great. All right. I'm a little bit jealous, Russell. I'm a little bit jealous. All right. The Halo Brony writes, the Steve Carell Space Force show is now out on Netflix in most countries. Gonna watch it later. I also want to recommend Beastar. It's a series on Netflix who has a more in-depth adult take on the Zootopia concept. Yeah, I've heard people talking about that. Even though the source came right out before Zootopia. Yeah, I've heard that about that. Now, regarding Space Force, I watched the first episode. I'm going to watch another 1 or 2. I am. I just haven't gotten around to it. I was not thrilled. You know what? Let me rephrase. I was disappointed. I was hoping for more because I really liked the trailer, the promos for Space Force. I really liked the promos for Space Force. I liked it a lot. And then I watched the episode and it was nowhere near as good as I was hoping it would be. It had its moments. Yeah, definitely the first episode of Space Force has its moments. But overall, I was like, you know, when you're binging something, you want to finish an episode and go, all right, click next. I didn't feel that at all. You know, and I watched it with me, Ann, and a buddy of mine who was over, and we're like, okay, well, that happened. What do you want to do now? Like, none of us thought, yeah. Let's watch the next episode. Hit next. None of us felt that. And I'm a huge Steve Carell fan. So I don't know. Maybe it gets better. But right now, the first episode did not really do it for me. All right, next up. M. Droscher writes, so, most cinemas here in Denmark opened last week, and The Empire Strikes Back is showing on the next weekend. Where'd it go? The first time I'm going to go see the film on the big screen. Cannot wait. You know what? Again, it's a terrible crap we're living in right now. but making lemonades out of lemons. One, if you can look for a little silver lining in the midst of the storm, the fact that we might get some opportunities to go back and watch movies on the big screen that either maybe we haven't had in a long time, or in your case, you never got to see Empire Strikes Back on the big screen. That's an awesome opportunity. You know, there was a movie once that said that within diversity, there is opportunity. And when you're facing diversity, within diversity, there is opportunity. And so, yeah, there's a lot of crappy stuff, Okay, so find the little silver linings where you can. And if one of those little silver linings is you get to go and watch something you've never seen, a classic like Empire Strikes Back, on the big screen, in a movie theater, the way movies are meant to be watched, take that as one of those little silver linings. Take that as one of those little, and I hope you enjoy it, Em. I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's see. Darren Barnes writes, I think we were about the same age, John, 1971. I'm a little bit younger than you, but we're right in that same range. Being in the UK, I was brought up on sci-fi. My old-time favorites are 5, Blake 7. I'm not familiar with Blake 7. 4, Automan. I remember Automan. It was after Tron, and I was in grade school, and I still remember the opening. It was, I don't know, but I remember as a kid, I loved it. It was literally a computer program man. Like, I am Automan. And it kind of looked like Tron a bit too, but I remember that. 3, V, I loved V. I loved V. That's when I was first exposed to Michael Ironside as an actor. I love V. 2, Space 1999, one of my favorite spaceships in all of sci-fi is from Space 1999. 1, A Man from Atlantis. I'm not familiar with Man from Atlantis. Special mention to Battlestar Galactica, though. Oh, of course, yeah, as a kid, I love the original Lorne Greene Battlestar Galactica. Dirk Benedict, Richard Hatch. I loved that show. I prefer the reimagining of it that Ronald D. Moore did, but it was all built on the foundation of that first Battlestar Galactica. I love that as well. Anyway, thanks for taking me down memory lane there, Darren. I appreciate that. All right, Ben Burnside writes, hey guys, I decided to watch Alien/Predator Requiem. Ooh, ouch. And wow, that movie sucked. Yes, sir, it did. I'm sure there are some people out there who like it because all film is subjective. And if you do, that's great. But yeah, man, that movie was rough. Fun to watch mindless action before bed, though, I guess. I was laughing at the attempts of character development because, yeah, and no disrespect to the actors, because maybe it was just bad directing. I don't know. Maybe it was just bad script, but the performances don't play all that great either. I was laughing at the attempts of character development in the humans for an Alien Predator movie. I'm happy they got eaten. Yeah, man, that's woo. Look, is there any franchise that we wanted more to be awesome than crossing aliens and predators? And they just were never able to crack the code. They were never able. They gave it a couple of shots. But they were just never able to crack that code, which is really too bad because just think about it. Alien versus Predator. The potential there is crazy. I'm not saying it's easy, but the potential is crazy big if you can find a way to crack the code. And I just feel like that's a potential franchise that they never really did ever figure out a way to crack that code, which is really too bad because it could have been great. All right, next up, Everything Entertainment writes, my franchise pet peeve, when a movie, usually part 2, serves no other purpose but to be an exposition dump for the info needed for the next film. Yeah, but you know, I think I get frustrated when any movie is clearly that half the purpose they made it is just to set up the next one, right? You watch movies like Star Wars, the original Star Wars. It left an open end where you could do a sequel, but you never once felt like you're watching is like, this is all just set up for the next movie. You never felt that at all. You never felt like, I mean, then there are others that do, like surprise you there, but there are times you get, like, for instance, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That movie just felt like nothing but a big, long commercial for the upcoming Sony Sinister Six movie. That's seriously what that whole movie felt like it was for. When you feel as an audience member that the main purpose of watching this movie is not for the narrative of this movie, but rather as a big commercial for an upcoming movie, it takes you out of the movie, man. And I was particularly, and I didn't think The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a terrible movie, by the way. it was a big step down from the first Amazing Spider-Man. I thought the first Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man was really quite good. I thought it was quite good. I don't think it gets the love it deserves. But part 2, while I did not hate it, it was a big step down. And that's part of the reason why. That's part of the reason why. So I don't think you're alone in that frustration, everything. I don't think you're alone in that frustration. Fabian Vegas writes, for the podcast version, why do you remove the intro part of the show? I always love the small talk during the beginning of the show. Yeah, so for those of you who are subscribed to the podcast, you'll notice that there are a couple things I edit out. One, I edit out the break because there's no reason to have, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of just the music playing, right? So I edit out the break and I start the podcast right with, let's go into topic number 1 or whatever the first topic is. I usually cut out the greetings and salutations, everybody, welcome and blah, 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 and the little small talk and banter. And I don't know, I just feel like for podcasts, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like for podcasts, I kind of like turn on the podcast and diving right in. Especially when you consider my podcasts are not short podcasts. Like my podcasts are like 2 hours long. A day. The show is over 2 hours a day. It shouldn't be that long, but it is. And so I just kind of feel like tighten it up a little bit, take out the stuff, just get right into the topics. That's how I feel like for the podcast. So yeah, that's why I do it. Maybe that's not the right thing to do, but I kind of feel like that's the best approach for the podcast. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, so I cut out all the intro fluff and I say, hey guys, thanks for joining us for this podcast edition. Now let's get to the episode. All right. And then you hear me from the show going, let's start with the first topic of the day. And then we go right into it. So that's why I do that. Maybe I'm right to do it. Maybe I'm wrong, but thanks for giving me your input on that, Fabian. I'll keep that in mind. I will keep that in mind. All right. GQ writes, hey, Gio. For those of you who don't know, Gio is actually, my real name is Giovanni. So that's why some people call me Gio. What is happening with your documentary so far? How are we going to be able to watch it? And what are you doing to avoid what happened with Schnepp's documentary? Well, how people are going to watch it, that's up in the air. I mean, right now I'm just focused on trying to get it made, and it has hit major snag with the pandemic, and I had to stop doing my interviews and stuff. Although I have gotten most of my interviews done. I still have a few I need to do. And obviously the pandemic kind of put a freeze on that. I thought about doing the remaining of my interviews via Zoom, but then I talked to some colleagues of mine to get their opinions, and they said, you know what? Nah, don't do that. Just wait till you can interview them in person. So progress on my documentary is stalled a little bit right now. Still doing a little bit of work on it, but it's stalled right now. But we'll be up and running again here pretty soon. How are you going to be able to see it? I don't know. Because listen, my documentary may suck ass. Might be terrible. For all I know. I don't know. I'm not a professional filmmaker. I've made some films, but I'm not a professional filmmaker. My thing may suck. And I know that. I know it might be awesome. I know it might be awesome. It might be great. I'm happy with it so far, but I just won't know until I finish it, right? So how you're going to be able to see it is really all going to depend on what is the final product like. I've already had a studio, one that you've heard of, mentioned to me they are interested in seeing my documentary once I have it complete. So I don't know if it's great. The way you'll probably see it is it'll probably be picked up by a streaming service. It's never going to play in a theater near you, but it'll probably be picked up by a streaming service if it's really good, right? If it's good, maybe I'll get it picked up by Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon Prime or something like that. Some home video distributor, maybe, if it's really good. If it's not good enough or doesn't meet the technical standards that any of the streaming services want to pick it up or anything like that, I don't know. Again, worst case scenario, I'll put it on YouTube. Now, as far as how I can avoid happening to this documentary, what happened to Schnepp, unfortunately, where it almost financially ruined him because so many people pirated his great documentary. Him and Holly did a tremendous documentary called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happens. It was wonderful. And it nearly ruined them financially. So many people pirated it. How do I avoid that? Well, it's not really... If I am able to license the movie to a streaming service or all that kind of stuff, then that becomes their problem. That's their issue. They know how to... They have their policies in place and how to deal with that. And if none of them pick it up, then I'm just going to put it out on YouTube, right? Because If it's not good enough that I can get a distributor to actually pick it up, then I'm just going to put it out on YouTube and let everybody see it. So if it does get picked up, the distributor will worry about the piracy issue. If it doesn't get picked up, then I'm probably just going to put it out on YouTube. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's good enough to put out on a streaming service, because I would love to actually make some money on it and then be able to use that money to roll into another film project, whether it's one of my own or one that I can invest in another director that I see somebody's got a great film project that they're doing and maybe I can invest in it and become a producer. I mean, I don't know. The hope is that we can start making movies, but I'm only gonna be able to do that if I can sell the first one. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you for your interest in it though. I appreciate that. All right. GQ also writes, pet peeve I hate. Why is it that 95% of the most important phone calls in movies go straight to voicemail? Well, okay, that is a pet peeve as well. But let's pretend that I don't keep my phone in the office here while let's say this remote control was a cell phone. Let's face it, 95% of our calls we let go straight to voicemail anyway. Usually me and a friend of mine have to play a little bit of phone tag before we get each other on the phone, right? I'll tell you what, Christian Harloff and I, the last 3 or 4 days, Christian Harloff and I have been communicating a lot. We've been, and quite often what happens is, I will call him, but he's like I'm not right beside my phone right now. So I call him, he doesn't answer, hang up. Then he'll call me back once he sees that I called. And then same thing, he calls me. I'm not right by my phone. I see that he called. Okay, now I call him back, right? But it feels like we live the way our culture is right now. It feels like answering the phone is not something we often do unless we are expecting a call, right? So that is a little bit of a pet peeve, GQ. But at the same time, it almost feels like it does that it does reflect reality a little bit. I feel like it does reflect reality a little bit. All right, next up. Royce Freeman writes, when actors have multi-film deals and the studio reboots franchises midstream like Casino Royale and carries over Judi Dench to play M, but it's a reboot, does that count as the same character or new iteration and not part of the original multi-film deal? It is 90% of the time part of the original deal. Because as Erin Cummings pointed out when she was on the show here the other day, I wasn't tired yawning. I just felt like the pressure I did the old airplane trick where try to pop your ear. For some reason, I just had an air pressure change in here. Anyway, I'm taking off. Erin Cummings pointed out the other day on the show that quite often you'll sign a multi-film deal with a studio for a franchise, but then they may not use that franchise, but they'll use you in other films instead. And so they'll pivot that contract into other films as well. So my guess, Royce, is that 90 probably +% of the time, it just applies. It doesn't have to be in the exact same franchise. It normally just applies. Now, your agent can put anything into a contract that you want if both sides agree. An agent can put in there, yeah, my client will only appear if it's this iteration of James Bond with this other actor playing James Bond in this specific. I mean, you can put that into a contract. I don't know that the studio would agree to it though, but you can put anything you want into a contract if both sides agree. Great. But I'm thinking like 90% of the time it's just carte blanche. I think it just covers just about everything. And sometimes it's not even for the same franchise. Sometimes they'll fulfill contracts, but in other films that are completely outside of the franchise that maybe they signed on for. So it all depends on the individual contract. All right. Dave XP writes, do you find crime/mystery movies to have less of a rewatchable value than other genres? Like, does knowing the outcome of a mystery make it less rewatchable for you? I gotta say, it's a great question. Theoretically, yes, it should take something away from me from having rewatchability. Because the point of the movie, it's a mystery, and I know what the mystery is. So theoretically, yes. But I gotta say, practically, it doesn't. Like, I went back to watch Knives Out 3 times in theaters, and I've watched it since. And I love it just as much every time, even though I know how it concludes. I know what the mystery being solved is. Let's go back to a bit of an older film. Let's go to Harrison Ford's The Fugitive, right? Okay, bit of a mystery. Who framed him? All this kind of stuff. I know the answer to it. And so theoretically, one would think that, oh yeah, I know how it works out already. Okay, you would think theoretically that should impact or affect my enjoyability, my potential for enjoyment watching it again. But in practical application, it doesn't. I love Knives Out just as much the fourth time I watched it as I did the first time. I love The Fugitive as much today. Seeing Tommy Lee Jones go, I don't care. There's a theme there. T'Challa saying, I don't care. Tommy Lee Jones saying, I don't care in The Fugitive. There's I don't care is the theme of today's show. I can watch it just as much today and appreciate it just as much today as I ever did. So it's a great question because theoretically, one answer, but in practical terms, another. I don't know. I think it'll be different from person to person. How do you guys? Do you find a mystery movie has less rewatchability for you? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Good question, Dave. All right, next up. Steven writes, hello, John. Have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, the show? I get asked that question at least once or twice a week. It's true. I really do. No, I have not. But I do see it is now on Netflix. And in deference to Chris Carr, who is an expert on The Last Airbender and has told me that I would really like it, I'm probably going to check it out. I am probably going to finally sit down and check it out. But no, I have never watched it yet. It dropped on Netflix in May, and I've been slowly rewatching it. I remember really enjoying it as a kid, but I appreciate it even more now that I'm older. It's really a great show. Yeah, I keep hearing from people telling me that they love it, that they really love Last Airbender, that they think it's great and wonderful, and at some point I got to check it out. I mean, of course, I saw the terrible movie. That movie was awful. But I have never seen the show, so hopefully I will get around to watching that sooner rather than later. All right. Ryan Albanese writes, visiting filming locations is a great social distancing / quarantine activity. It is a great activity, period. I love going to actual physical locations where I know they shot a certain scene in a movie that I love. I love that. In the last week, my fiance and I have driven from Nashville to North Carolina for The Fugitive train. We're just talking about The Fugitive. Great minds, my friend. For The Fugitive train wreck and dam jump scene. I don't care. Anyway, Georgia is GA, Georgia. Again, I'm Canadian. You got to forgive me. Georgia for my cousin Vinny's locations, and Alabama for Roll Tide, for Tom and Huck. I mean, seriously, I've never traveled to visit a movie's location except for while they're actually filming. But I've never traveled to visit a film location. But I got to say, man, I love when I do find myself at a place. It's like, oh my gosh, this is where they shot this. And there's something about it. You get to take in the history of it. You get to take in the nostalgia of it. There's just something about that is just really cool and really special, and that I like very, very, very much. So I think that sounds like a great idea. All right, listen, guys, I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to take a second break. It's been about an hour since our last break. And I'm talking nonstop here. And so I've run out of my drink again, and I need to rest my throat for just a second. And I don't want to end the show yet. So I'm going to answer one more question, and then we're going to take another like 1 to 2 minute break, just so I can refill the drink, rest the voice for just a second. And then we'll keep right on rolling. All right. Diamond Dogs Puppy writes, hello, John. Overrated film of the day is 2008's. Whoa, you just hurt my heart, Diamond Dog. Wall-E, overrated? Hey man, all film's subjective, but you hurt my heart. In my opinion, it has always been overblown with its artistic and philosophical praise. The first half is impressive, CGI, but it was so slow, and the second half was garish visual noise thoughts. I disagree. But that's the beautiful thing about movies, man. We can disagree with these. I found Wall-E particularly brilliant, and I remember I was talking to the main entertainment writer for Time magazine. She's a friend of mine, and we were talking. We had both just seen Wall-E, and like I remember her coming out and saying, like, I loved Wall-E, I loved it. But I remember her saying, she gave me a really neat perspective on it. She goes, "This isn't like just the best animated movie of the year. This is one of the best true science fiction movies. If you really think about it, this Wall-E is a true science fiction film." And she said, this is one of the best science fiction films I've seen in years. Not like in the last 50 years, but in the last couple of years, this is like one of the best science fiction films I've seen in years. And I agree with her on that. Just the use of being able to tell story without dialogue, the philosophy of it, the allegories of it, the beautiful character dimensions and interactions, and you just love the hero. You just love the hero. So, hey, listen, all movies are subjective, so it's going to hit us all in different ways. And if it didn't work for you, my brother, it didn't work for you, and that's okay. But since you're asking me, I will tell you, I freaking love Wall-E. I could watch that every 6 months. I just adore that film. But hey, you didn't, and that's okay. All right, guys, listen, I am going to take another quick break. I apologize for that, but like talking straight for an hour is not as easy as it sounds or it looks. So hang tight with me, guys. Give me like 1 or 2 minutes, and I will be right back. Hang tight. Guys, and we are back. Thank you for your patience and indulgence as I took another little break there. Let's keep right on rolling now, shall we? Next up, Stephen May writes, John Boyega was in the wrong for not wearing a covering. He could have potentially spread the virus to thousands of people. That's inexcusable. Black Lives Matter. Yes, so do those of the vulnerable. I listen, I think you have to take, I respect what you're saying, but I also think you have to take into consideration the environment and what is happening. No, one person is not going to spread. That's not how everything we've seen, read, heard, and understand was that one guy standing in one place was not going to spread it to thousands of people. That's not how it works. Under normal circumstances, yeah, you want to be out there with the mask. There are some things, though, and sometimes that normal circumstances supersede things. Yes, the right thing to do is A. But sometimes when you're in a certain circumstance, B has to take precedence over A, depending on the circumstance. And I think that situation with John Boyega is an example where, yes, A should be the baseline rule. A being, always wearing masks, blah, blah, blah. A should be the baseline rule. Yes. But there's an extraordinary circumstance happening where B had to supersede A, even if it's just momentarily. Right? I think you always have to be cognizant of what the environment is, what's going on. So I agree, A should be the underlying base rule, but sometimes under extreme circumstances and in very unique circumstances and very limited circumstances, B has to supersede A. You know what I mean? I personally feel, and again, I respect what you're saying, and I think there's merit to what you're saying. I'm just saying, for me, I believe this is one of those situations where B has to supersede A. If that makes sense? Or should I use watermelons and apples as a part of my analogy? Would that help it out more? So yes, sometimes B has to supersede A, even when A is generally the right thing. So that's just my thought on that. All right. Next up, Nelson writes, Hey, John, listening to you on my 8-hour drive from Vermont to DC to peacefully protest for systemic change to our criminal or systematic change to our criminal justice system. My parents didn't immigrate here for me to sit this one out. Thank you for the quality content you provide. Well, I appreciate you doing that. And listen, let me bring something up here. I would highly encourage you. Look, I'm not telling anybody to get political or anything like that at all. None of that. What I do want to suggest, though, is when extraordinary things are going on in our culture like they are right now, it never hurts. I'm not telling anybody to take any. I'm just saying here, it never hurts to hear the people involved, to hear them, try to understand them if you can. So that's why, like, for instance, I put this on my Twitter the other day. My wife and I, there was a Black Lives Matter rally here in Burbank, and my wife and I decided to go because in the midst of the extraordinary circumstances going on right now, with somebody who's as out of touch as I am as it pertains to the issues that a lot of people are facing, it never hurts to try to listen. It never hurts to try to hear people out and maybe increase your understanding of something. I don't think that's ever a bad idea. So I applaud you for going and doing that, especially if that's something your conscience is driving you to do. So I applaud you for that, Nelson. I really do. All right. Anyway, thanks for that, man. And thanks for letting me come along on that trip with you, my friend. Wong writes, "Hey, John. Regarding theaters reopening, eating or drinking is not allowed inside the movie theaters here in Hong Kong since it's reopening 3 weeks ago. They don't even want anyone to take off their masks for a few seconds just to drink some water." That's interesting. Now, I think Hong Kong, and I might be way off in this. I thought Hong Kong was hit pretty hard. Maybe, but also listen, Hong Kong opened 3 weeks ago. So maybe opening even earlier than most other people are reopening, maybe they just wanted to be more cautious. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I know that won't happen in North America, though, especially here. I don't know the climate in Hong Kong, but especially here, theaters, if they're not selling concession stands, they might as well just stay closed. I mean, seriously, they don't make any money from movie tickets. They keep such a small portion of the movie ticket money. There's no point in them even opening their doors. They don't make enough money from movie tickets to make up for the expense of being open. So if they're not selling concessions, there's no point in opening their doors again. I mean, it really is that black and white. There is no point in opening, because if it costs you $10 a day to run your business, if you're open and you only have the maximum potential to make $7 that day, then by opening, you're losing more money. And that's kind of the situation that a lot of the movie theaters here are facing. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of procedures, what kind of policies do they have to make this all work. But it's really neat hearing how different places around the world are approaching it on their terms. So that's really cool to hear. Thanks for sharing that, Wong. I appreciate that. All right, next up, Ethan Holgate writes, "Hey, John. With Apple and Paramount funding Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, does that mean $100 million from each company to make the movie? Obviously, Apple is a $1 trillion company, so I don't think $100 million is a big problem for them." Listen, even the richest companies, $100 million is $100 million. Actually, no. Apple is 100% financing it. From my understanding of the story and the reports, Apple is 100% financing it. Paramount had the production rights and the distribution rights. But they told Marty Scorsese, we're not paying $200 million for a period drama piece. So what they did was they gave Marty Scorsese and his agents permission to go and shop the production rights around to other places. Apple stepped up and said, we will produce this movie. We will finance and produce it. So they will finance and produce it, but Paramount holds on to their distribution rights. So when Marty Scorsese makes the Killers of the Flower Moon, when he does make that movie, Paramount will be the distributor and distribute it in theaters. Then, once it's done its theatrical run and it's finished its theatrical window, then it'll go on Apple TV+. So yeah, Apple is paying for it. Paramount is distributing it in theaters, and then once the theatrical window is done, it'll go on to Apple TV+. So that's how they're doing it. And yeah, no other studio is going to put, look, Apple knows they're going to lose money on this. They know this, but they are really trying to get their Apple TV Plus up and running. And nobody's talking about Apple TV Plus, and they're putting out some pretty good stuff, but nobody's talking about them. They really want to get in the game. They want to be front and foremost in people's faces about the content they're doing. And so even though they're going to lose money on this Flowers of the Killer Moon or whatever it's called, even though they're going to lose money on it, it's worth it to them because they need to get into this race a little more seriously. And so that's how that's going to work out. All right. Let's see here. Nathan, was that Ethan? Yes, it was. Nathan Taylor writes, my local theater is showing Jaws and Back to the Future this weekend. Nice. That's a nice double feature if you can do that. After being closed for months, I've always wanted to watch these movies in a theater. They are two of my favorites. So excited. You know, I'll tell you what, I did. They did a Back to the Future re-release about 7 years ago, I think. I think it was about 7 years ago. And I went to go watch Back to the Future on the big screen again at that time. It was great. I have never seen Jaws on the big screen. I was too young. So I have never seen Jaws on the big screen. That would be a great one to see on the big screen for the first time. I'm a little bit envious of you there, Nathan. Good on you, man. All right. Inconceivable writes, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. When Disney finally gets around to a Planet of the Apes remake, I would, 1, hope they get Bryan Cranston to play Taylor, and 2, hope they use today's current events to highlight injustices in the world. Listen, I get it. I respect what it is you're saying, and I'm a big Bryan Cranston fan too and all that kind of stuff, but one of the things we as fans really need to get out of the habit of doing, and I'm talking to myself because I do it too, one of the things we as fans, including this guy, needs to get out of the habit of doing is writing the movie in our heads before anybody's written the movie. Right? You don't even know that there's going to be a Taylor character. And if they do, you don't even know what that character, what this iteration of the character is going to be like. And Bryan Cranston may be totally the wrong guy to play that role. Like, everybody wanted Bryan Cranston to play Lex Luthor, and I would have been down for that too. But then when you see the Lex Luthor they were going for, Bryan Cranston would have been totally wrong for it. Like, so when you think, oh man, they should have Bryan Cranston, what you're really saying is they should have completely rewritten the character in a completely different way, and then an actor like Bryan Cranston would have fit into it. But Bryan Cranston was not going to fit that Lex Luthor. And I'm not even a big Jesse Eisenberg fan. I'm not. I personally thought Jesse Eisenberg did a pretty good job with it. I'm in the minority on that. I understand. But I actually thought Jesse Eisenberg did a pretty good job with the character as it was written. But the way that character was written, Bryan Cranston would not have been a good fit. And so we don't know, we have no idea what they're going to go for in this movie, what is going to tell the best story, and if it would do well to highlight current things going on in the world. I don't know if that would make sense. Maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. So I just think, Inconceivable, you're doing something here that I do myself sometimes, which is creating what the movie is going to be in our heads before it even comes out. Now that's the movie you got to make. It's like, no, let's let them make their movie and then let's see how it turns out. But listen, dude, I'm with you. I do it all the time. I freaking do it all the time. I start writing the movie in my head without knowing anything about what's actually going into the movie, right? And it's something we as film fans do, and you have to forgive us if we get a little bit enthusiastic about it. All right. King Kong's Ding Dong, going back to something Aaron said the other day. Hey, John, big fan and have been since the AMC days. Well, thank you so much. With the mention of the legendary John Snap, R.I.P., I realized I haven't watched The Death of Superman Lives What Happened yet. I would love to check it out, but I can't find it anywhere. Any idea where or how to see it? I don't. I mean, obviously, I've got a copy of it, so that's easy for me. Hold a second. The Death of Superman Lives What Happened. Let me see if I can find it anywhere here. Where can you stream it? Because I know it was on Showcase, or not Showcase, not Stars. It was on, anyway, it was on Showtime? Showtime. I think it was on Showtime for a period. So I'm pretty sure you can find it somewhere to stream. I would go and search through, I would search through your Roku and see if you can pull it up somewhere. I'm going to guess you can probably find it on AMC or on Amazon Prime or on a Google Play Store or something like that. I would guess you can. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess you can probably find it there. Other than that, I haven't really thought about it because I have a copy of it. So Yeah, but I highly recommend it. If you can find it, highly recommend it. If I do stumble across it somewhere, although you'll have just as good of a chance of finding it somewhere as me right now, if I do stumble across it somewhere, I will make sure to let you guys know where, but I got to imagine you can find it in one of those places. All right. Thanks for writing that in, man. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, I agree with the viewer of yours. I got an early copy of Last of Us 2. Graphics are outstanding. Hard to tell what's gameplay and what's cinematic cutscenes. And combat is a step up from the first one. And if John, this game is already in talks for Game of the Year. See, I've heard from a couple of people. Now, I know the review embargo on Last of Us 2 lifts on June 12th. So in about a week, it lifts. But I have heard from a couple of people who've gotten review copies privately. They're saying the game is in almost every way better than the original. Don't take me saying that because I haven't seen it. I know a lot of people got their little knickers in a twist when they heard about some of the leaks that came out. And listen, I've said this before on the show, I'll say it again. I didn't like the sound of the leaks. But again, let's go to Avengers Endgame. If we had found out 2 months before the movie came out that Thanos gets his head cut off in the first 10 minutes of the movie, people would have rioted. He's been the main bad guy the entire series so far. How can you just kill him off in the first 10 minutes? This is outrageous. Blah, 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 blah. That would have been us. Probably would have been me. But when we see the movie in context, it's like, yeah, he does get his head cut off in the first 10 minutes, but don't worry, that's not the end of him, blah, blah, blah. And there's all this other information we didn't know. I agree with everybody getting their little knickers in a twist. That the stuff we've heard leaked about Last of Us 2 does not sound good. I agree it doesn't sound good, but there's no point in getting upset about it because we're just hearing a bunch of these little details without knowing the full context of everything and how it works and fits itself into the overall game. So why get upset at this point? Wah. That's probably how I sound a lot too. Wah. Why get upset? I agree. Doesn't sound good. But let's wait. And right now, and I'm not the biggest Last of Us advocate in the world, but right now I have heard from like 3 or so people that have played the game and they're actually whispering better than the first one. Now that's only a couple of people, but again, who knows? Maybe it'll be terrible. Maybe it'll be great, but I'm hearing from some people that it's actually pretty good. So thanks for sharing that, man. All right. Deckard 2049 writes, little Blade Runner thing there. Ghostbusters Afterlife, Indy 5, Jurassic World 3, and many others are on the way. How would you feel about legacy characters, i.e. Ford, Goldblum, Neil, Dern, Aykroyd, Murray, Hudson, Weaver, and Potts returning to their old franchises? And will Indy 5 happen? Well, I mean, they're saying, I mean, they're getting James Mangold. They just confirmed that James Mangold is the director for the new Indiana Jones. Whether or not it's actually going to happen, that's the $1 billion question. Is the movie actually going to happen? I have my doubts. But they're saying they're doing it. And Indy is coming back. Harrison Ford is coming back to do that, right? So we've seen a lot of that. It's like, it's not a new concept. Like they just did it with Star Wars. Sylvester Stallone does it with Rocky and Rambo all the time. So it's not a new concept. Honestly, and we did see some of the original, including Bill Murray, come back for the latest Ghostbusters incarnation that they did. I'm honestly not all that interested, especially with no Egon. I'm not all that interested in seeing an original Ghostbusters crew back for another movie. I'm really not. If Egon was going to be there, maybe. But with him there, I just don't have any interest in that, really. I'll just enjoy the original. I don't even think Ghostbusters 2 was all that good. I'll be honest with you. I got some friends that love Ghostbusters 2, but I don't mind Ghostbusters 2, but it ain't the original Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? But yeah, without Egon, I'm not really interested in the original cast there, but it is going to be Indy. And we see it happening a lot in Hollywood today, man. We see it happening a lot. All right, next up, Jay Vett writes, John, I loved your choices, especially leading with Remember the Titans, hashtag Disney Plus. The Help and Hidden Figures is another really good one. I liked Hidden Figures a lot, as a matter of fact. Hidden Figures, such strong black women. Selma, best, yeah, that was Ava DuVernay's picture. I love Selma. Love that movie. Best Picture nominee and winner of Best Music. However, the film for me is Glory. Glory's another really good one, Jay. There's 2 of 2. Being an Army vet, every time I watch this movie, I see Best and Worst of America performances by Denzel, Matthew Broderick, wow, Morgan Freeman, Carrie Ewells, of course, who was Wesley in Princess Bride. Seeing this in high school was one of the reasons I joined the military. Love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, no, it's marvelous. It's a marvelous film. That's a great one. There are a number of great films. Like you also pointed out, I thought about mentioning Hidden Figures. I did. I thought about mentioning Hidden Figures. And by the way, one of the women portrayed in that movie, the real woman that is based on, she just died recently, which is, she was much older. She lived a full life, but I was just really happy she got to live to see the movie about her and her friends got made. I mean, I just think that was great. But yeah, Glory is, and the cast is stacked. It's one of those definitive movies. It really is. I mean, I still prefer movies like an Amistad or a Mississippi Burning, but Glory has got to be right up there. So I think that's a really, really good pick, man. Thanks for bringing that one up. Let's see here. Jose Sanchez writes, hey, John. Much love, my friend. Thank you, Jose. People need to stop bringing up Rob. It's very disrespectful, and it blows my mind how ugly and rude some of this people can be. I send Rob my love. Aaron is looking beautiful. You guys rock, and you are a role model to me. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's funny you mentioned, like, literally, you saw me look over here. I literally just got a text from Rob. Also, let me actually open it and just double check to see. Okay, it is a super, super long message he sent me, so I don't have a chance to read it right now. Anyway, listen. Rob is great. And Rob will be back. Look, I've said it before. I will say it again. And the first person I said this to was Rob himself. All right. What Rob wrote was not just dumb. It was irresponsible and dangerous. It was irresponsible and dangerous. But I also know somebody who has known and personally worked with Rob for 5 years that what he wrote was not close to being indicative of what he actually thinks, believes, and who he is. It was something he wrote in anger and being socially enraged. And then, like many of us do, when we get angry and mad and enraged, we just dig our heels in and just kind of make it worse for a little bit. And that's what Rob did. He did. But it doesn't change the fact that he very, very quickly realized, once he took a breath, he realized, oh my God, he realized how it came across. And he immediately moved to apologize after, the initial outrage and then digging his heel and getting into a spat, particularly with RB3. He got into the spat online with RB3. And very shortly after that, he realized, I was wrong. I was wrong. And he apologized. I know he and I spoke several times on the phone that night. Once when he was still really mad. A little bit later, once he had calmed down and realized what had happened and the seriousness of the situation. And he felt terrible. He felt terrible. And I just know that about him. I just know that what he wrote was a misrepresentation of what he actually thinks and believes, and he spoke out of anger. Now, I'm going to say this too. And it's not my place to talk about other people on other networks and other channels, but I feel like I have to right here. Let me talk for a second about RB3. Listen, I don't know RB3 very well. I really don't. I've had limited experiences with RB3. I've had limited exposure to RB3. So I don't know him nearly 1/100th the way I know Robert Meyer Burnett. But my experiences with RB3 have always been pretty positive. I've always thought he's a good kid. I'll be on my limited experience with RB3 has been that he's a good kid. He's a good kid. Do I approve of how he conducted himself and handled a personal situation with somebody that he has worked with within Schmodown and all that kind of stuff? No. Do I think there was something inappropriate about, because he was one of the first person to tell Rob, and rightfully so. He was one of the first people to tell Rob, and rightfully so, Rob, you should remove that tweet. You should delete that. There is something inappropriate about saying that if you're just going to screen capture the tweet and reshare it to everybody else later once the other guy has taken the tweet down. There's something disingenuous, and there's something, it was wrong. It was wrong. It was also wrong to not just, if you have a problem with somebody that you know, to get on the phone with them and talk to them, or call Christian and as an intermediary to work things out. To take your beef with somebody that you know and work with, public and online, without trying to go through those channels first, I think is inappropriate. And RB3 has taken a lot of heat online, but I would say the same thing about RB3 that I'm saying about Rob. Listen, Rob was angry and he was mad, and he said and did some things, he wrote something terribly dangerous and terribly inappropriate and terribly irresponsible. But we understand he did it out of anger and rage, and he instantly regretted it. And I would say the same. Listen, what RB3 saw being written made him angry. And I'm just saying this as a bystander on the outside, from the outside looking in. Understand that. But what he saw made him angry. So I would personally suggest, and I know everybody's going to get mad at me saying this, but I don't give a fuck. If we're going to say about Rob's actions, and understandably so, look, we get it. He was angry. He was mad. He said some things he shouldn't have said in the moment of it. Okay, we get it. Then we've got to cut RB3 that same slack. You got to understand why somebody would read what Rob had written if you don't know him as well as I do. You got to understand, like, reading what he wrote, given the circumstances that we're living in today, that made, again, I'm saying this as an observer from the outside looking in. I don't know RB3. I didn't speak to him, but I'm just saying, you got to understand from somebody's perspective that he looked at that and it probably made him really hot. It probably made him really mad, and you can understand why. So what I'm saying is, for everybody giving RB3 a really hard time right now, I would say, if we're going to cut Robert some slack, understanding, hey, listen, emotions are high, everybody's mad and angry, and he was mad and angry. If we're going to cut him that slack, and I believe we should cut him that slack, then I would say to everybody giving RB3 a hard time right now, you got to afford him the same slack. If you're going to say we understand that Rob was mad, then you got to understand why RB3 felt mad. And yeah, did RB3 do some things that I wouldn't necessarily approve of? Sure. But so did Rob. I just think, listen, we are living in an environment right now where people are getting frustrated and sick of this quarantine. And then we've got all these issues of racial inequality in our culture and all that kind of stuff all popping up. Everybody's tense. Everybody's frustrated. Everybody's mad. I just feel like right now more than ever, we need to take a breath and cut people some slack. Cut people some slack. And I believe that is every bit as true for RB3 and everybody giving him a hard time right now as it is for Robert Meyer Burnett. Everybody's mad. Everybody's hot. And people are maybe acting and saying things in such a way and maybe doing some things that maybe aren't indicative of their real character. And we got to be able to be willing to cut them all a little bit of slack right now. Got to be willing to cut them some slack right now. So I think everybody who's gang piling on Robert Meyer Burnett needs to take a breath. I think everybody who's gang piling on in response to RB3, I think y'all just need to take a breath. You know, again, I know Robert better than I know RB3, but from my limited exposure, these are both two good guys. And who, like everybody else, is mad and angry and frustrated and acting and reacting. And you know what? Just cut them some slack. They'll work it out. They'll work it out. And you know who I really felt bad for in this whole thing? The person I felt really bad for in this whole thing was Christian Harloff. I felt really bad for Christian Harloff in this whole thing because Christian has been taking a lot of heat for all this. A situation he didn't create, right? Because do you think for 1 second that while Rob was going off and then RB3 starts going off and then other people in the Schmoedown universe start going off, do you think for 1 second any of them stopped and said, hey, maybe we should think about how this is going to affect Christian, the guy we work with, the guy who's given us jobs, the guy who's given us platforms? Maybe I guarantee you none of them, not Rob, not RB3, none of them stopped for a second and thought, I wonder how me acting this way on a public platform right now is really going to cripple and damage and hurt a mutual friend of ours who's got more to lose in this thing than any of us, and nobody stopped to think about how's this going to affect him? How's this going to affect the Schmoedown that we are all a part of? How is this going to affect any of this stuff? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to repeat words that he's told me, but like this has affected Christian, who never asked for this, who did not create this situation, who was unwillingly thrown in front of the truck that he suddenly had to deal with, even though the situation wasn't his fault, wasn't of his doing, wasn't of his creation, but now he's got to stand there in front of the truck. And he had to make a decision about, well, if I say I decide one thing, half the people are going to hate me and say they never watch me again. If I decide the other thing, then the other half of people are going to say they hate me and never watch me again. Christian never asked for it. He didn't create the problem. It was created by people around him created the problem. And he had to face the firing squad for it. He had to face the problem of it. And that's why I just think all of us need to take a breath. Cut Christian some slack. Cut Rob some slack. Cut RB3 some slack. It's a heated, awful, terrible time. And I just think before engaging in cancel culture on RB3 or Rob or anybody, just understand, listen, everybody's running hot. Everybody's running hot. How about we give Rob and RB3 an opportunity? Let's just take a breath and let's let these two good guys work it out. Let's let them work it out. You know? Instead of jumping in a reactionary fashion to jump down Robert's throat, or in response, jumping down RB3. Listen, it's a hard time for everybody. Everybody's doing some things and saying some things that maybe they wouldn't do or say under normal circumstances, which just highlights the case, guys. Listen, if you know somebody, you work with somebody, you got a problem with them, get on the damn phone and talk to them. Don't get on Twitter. Don't get on Facebook or Instagram and start throwing other people under the bus. If you're in a position where you're like, Robert, you're really mad about something, maybe instead of just venting on Twitter, maybe call somebody up and vent to them instead. You know, instead of doing that. I just, it's a horrible situation that's hurting a lot of people right now. And I'm talking within the confines of Schmoedown and the people involved there. It is an awful situation that's hurting a lot of people that could have been avoided if, you know, Rob, instead of getting angry and wanting to vent online, gave me a call. I said, Campea, can you believe what's going on? This 77-year-old black former cop gunned down in the streets and blah, blah, blah. People don't even care about the real issues. They're just trying to loot and blah, blah. If he had just called me or somebody else and vented that way instead of jumping on Twitter, and I think there's life lessons here for me. I think there's life lessons here for all of us. This could have all been avoided. Then if when he did that, instead of responding to Rob on Twitter, if somebody had picked up a phone and like said, Christian, let's get in touch with Rob. Can we talk to Rob? Can we get him to stand down from this? Can we talk him down off this ledge? If that had happened, nobody gets, I don't know. I'm just glad it wasn't me. I'm just glad I wasn't the one in the middle of the situation. I'm not going to lie. I'm very, very selfish in that sense. I'm very happy it was Christian in that situation and not me. But yeah, it was a terrible, awful situation that I hope, and I believe that cooler heads shall prevail. And I know, listen, and everybody's giving Christian a hard time right now. I'm telling you what, Christian has been working. I've been on the phone and talking with Christian 4, 5, 6 times in the last couple of days. I am telling you right now, Christian is working very hard behind the scenes, trying to get this whole thing resolved. He's doing his best. He really is. And again, Rob and RB3 are both good guys. I know that more about Rob than I do about RB3 just because I don't know him as well. But from my understanding, these are both good guys. And I think something will get worked out. Anyway, sorry, guys. I went off on that big, huge, long tangent. But there's that. And you guys will see Robert back here soon. You will see Robert back here on this show soon. All right. Next up. Sorry, guys. Went on a huge, long tangent. I'm sorry. But, it's affecting people I know. It's affecting people I know and people I respect, and it's tough. So I went off on a little bit there. So forgive me. Anyway, Suthius writes, "Hey guys, I haven't kept up with the John Campea Show in about 2 to 3 weeks. Reason, I binged the entire Stargate SG-1 series." I like the Stargate SG-1 series. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great sci-fi. Love the characters. Love the themes and the possibilities the show represents. Up next, Stargate Atlantis. Not as good as Stargate SG-1. I'll tell you right now. Stargate Atlantis, although it does introduce us to Jason Momoa, which is pretty cool. But, the thing is, the lower budget nature of Stargate SG-1 will deceive you into how deep the sci-fi elements really are in the show. It's profoundly good. I really like Stargate SG-1. I wasn't a big major fan of a lot of the other stuff that came afterwards, but that first series I thought was absolutely terrific. All right, Jaron Morris writes, "John, you are having dinner with Joel from Last of Us, and you can ask him one question. What do you ask?" Me, I would ask if he had time to think, would he make the same decision? This is the only thing I would ask him. This is the only question to ask him. Would he make the same decision at the end of Last of Us? What would you ask? I mean, that's the only question. You can ask him something trivial. How do you deal with the loss of your kid? You could do all that. But I mean, the question to ask is, what was your mindset? What made you decide? And listen, the ending of Last of Us reminds me a lot of the ending of $1 Million Baby. Because at the end of $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood's character is faced with a horrible decision. Horrible decision. He's got his fighter, right? Let me just bring something up here. He's got his fighter. He's got Hilary Swank, right? And come on, load up here. Okay, the script was by Paul Haggis. That's what I was looking for. Paul Haggis wrote the script on this one. And Eastwood directed it. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant movie if you haven't seen it yet. And if you don't know what movie we're talking about, it's this one here, $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood. At the end of the movie, Eastwood's character faces a terrible decision. A terrible decision. For those of you who have not seen it, I won't give away what the decision he has to make is. But Eastwood has to make a terrible choice and a terrible decision. And he makes it. He makes a choice. It was a lose-lose. He didn't want to do either. But there was a lose-lose. And he made one decision. The movie did not say, or was set up in a way of, the Clint Eastwood character did the right thing. No. The Clint Eastwood character had a terrible decision to make. Was put into an impossible situation, had a terrible decision to make. And he made it. The movie made no judgments about whether or not he made the right decision, the wrong decision. It just was that's the decision he had to make. The ending of Last of Us was, I always found, very reminiscent of $1 Million Baby. That there is a strong argument that Joel should have done the other thing. There's a strong argument to be made that he should have done the other thing. But we wanted him to do the thing that he did. And I don't feel like the game itself, the story of the game, it never tried to tell us just that he definitely did the right thing or he definitely did the wrong thing. It didn't do that. It just leaves it up to you as the player, much like $1 Million Baby left it up to you and me as the audience to individually wrestle with that ending. So if you're going to ask me, what would I ask Joel? It would have to be about that. It would have to be about that, 100%. All right, next up is an anonymous viewer writes, best civil rights movie, A Time to Kill. Time to Kill is great, or To Kill a Mockingbird is no. Anyway, Matthew McConaughey's best performance. He's very good in it. And Joel Schumacher's best movie. When he says, "Now pretend she was white" in this courtroom speech, it really hits me. Never seen McConaughey give that kind of emotion on screen since. Well, I mean, I still kind of feel like his best performance, not to be stereotypical, but was his Academy Award winning performance in Dallas Buyers Club. But he is great in that. He is great in that. And, you know, that line that you're talking about really does remind me a lot of the Baldwin line from, we were just talking about earlier from I Am Not Your Negro, when he says, you know, give me liberty, give me death. Okay, yeah, when a white guy says that, we all applaud. When a black man says that, you know, suddenly everybody gets scared. You know, it reminds me a lot of that moment. So that's a really good one to bring up, Anonymous. Well done. All right. Malik Carter writes, hey, John, was wondering your thoughts on John Boyega's Black Lives Matter speech in London. I found it inspiring and made me nearly choke up. Listen, the thing that I was telling somebody about it, and they asked me, how would you characterize the speech? And I just said passionate. It's passionate. You know, a little bit earlier in the show today, I mentioned when somebody, almost on any topic, communicates about something really articulately, it brings it home really more. But the other thing is true as well. When somebody talks about almost any topic, you can be talking about kitchen cleaning supplies if you want. When somebody speaks to something with passion, it becomes that much more impactful. And I thought Boyega's speech was clearly very passionate. And because it was so passionate, it really pierces everything else and it gets to the heart of it. And so what can I say? I thought it was an incredibly well done, very passionate, spoken from the heart thing. So I like John Boyega a lot, man. I really do. All right. Next up. Character A dies in the line of duty. He's technologically brought back to life, but doesn't remember his past. His girlfriend/wife has moved on. He regains his memory and goes out on a mission to take down the company that made him. Did I just describe RoboCop or Bloodshot? I do that a lot. There's a lot of times when like there's a movie that's almost exactly like another one. I say, okay, guys, let me set up a scenario. This happens and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. Did I just describe this movie or this movie? And it really is. Yep. And you know what? There's others beyond RoboCop or Bloodshot that use that same basic kind of motif. It works. Unfortunately, Bloodshot was not that good. You know me, I'm a big Vin Diesel fan. I like Vin Diesel family. I love Vin Diesel. And even in the ridiculous stuff, I love Vin Diesel. And I like the trailers for Bloodshot. Unfortunately for me, Bloodshot just didn't work. Which is too bad. But you know what? Speaking of RoboCop, there was a remake of RoboCop not long ago that Michael Keaton was in, and I actually thought it was okay. I thought the RoboCop remake was actually pretty good. Nowhere near as good as the original, don't get me wrong, but I thought the new RoboCop was actually pretty good. I thought there were some people who hated on it just because it wasn't the original RoboCop. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make excuses for why somebody else didn't like the movie, but I actually thought it was pretty good by its own merits. I thought it was all right. All right, next up. Deckard 2049 writes, release the Craven cut. Wes Craven's Cursed was appropriately titled because the studio destroyed that film. With Snyder's cut of Justice League finally coming, will we ever see Craven's cut of Cursed? Rick Baker's practical effects are enough for me to want to see it. Well, see, the big fundamental difference, so like, here's the thing. Snyder cut comes, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks X cut of everything can now come out, right? We all forget that the circumstances surrounding Justice League, all the things that went on with it, flowing into Snyder cut and all that stuff is so incredibly unique. We have never seen a combination of circumstances in something like the Snyder cut ever in Hollywood before. I mean, it's a totally different thing. There are so many different moving pieces of that, from a death in the family, the previous films that led up to Justice League, the internal battle going on within Warner Brothers about whether they even wanted Zack Snyder to direct Justice League in the first place or not. Like, and then everything that happened after Justice League then coming out in theaters. Hey, critics liked it more than the last couple of films, and so did the audience, but it made way less money. And so it's just the circumstances surrounding Snyder Cut are so unique that there is no comparing it to, like, a lot of people try to bring up the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. Well, they're doing that so they can do the Ayer cut. And even though there's some initial teases, David Ayer has kind of made it clear that that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I'm just taking him at his word, whatever. Also, the situation like Craven stuff, that's not, because the other thing too is, even if you want to get behind all the drama that went on behind the scenes that made that situation so unique, the other thing you got to keep in mind is this. There's not a lot of people out there that care about Cursed. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You stop the average person in the street and ask them if they know what that movie is. They don't know what that movie is. Everybody knows what Justice League is. So it's such a radically different circumstance. I don't think you can draw any sort of equation there. So I'm going to guess no. My guess would be no. I would never bet $1,000 against it, but my guess is going to be no right now for all those things and probably a million other reasons more. I'm not saying that you're wrong, that it wouldn't necessarily be better. I'm just saying I don't think there's any lines to connect that says this is somehow relatable to the Snyder Cut situation. It's just such a totally radically different scenario. Anyway, next up, Jaron Morris writes, John the Verge, GameSpot, IGN, and Washington Post are dropping overall thoughts, and John is decisive by saying it's either better than the first or it's just as good, and I can agree with them. Okay, I'm guessing you're talking about Last of Us 2? Really? The Verge, GameSpot, and IGN are all dropping hints on that? I thought the review embargo was the 12th. Did they move it up? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I know it'll make a lot of people very happy if it is that good. It'll make a lot of people very happy if it is that good. Okay, next up. Dan Ketchum writes, some sites are claiming that Evan Peters, who played Quicksilver in the X-Men, has a secret role in the upcoming WandaVision show. Is this true, and do you think they could be introducing Quicksilver and the X-Men this quickly? Unintentional pun. Again, this goes back to the whole thing about there are reports that Ben Affleck, or that HBO Max wants Ben Affleck back as Batman, which would be the greatest thing in the world. But again, none of the real trades are reporting that I know of. None of the real trades are reporting that. So I'm not going to worry about it too much until we hear it. Because if it's real, it will come out in the real trades. Then we can talk about it. I would say this, though. Theoretically speaking, if they do get Evan Peters in WandaVision, I don't think there's any reason to just assume he's playing Quicksilver because he did in the X-Men universe. Remember, they're rebooting X-Men. They're rebooting the X-Men. They're not bringing the X-Men from the Fox universe into the MCU. They are restarting X-Men. So if, and that's a big if Evan Peters is going to make an appearance in WandaVision, I don't think there's any reason to believe he'd be playing Quicksilver. Now, one could make an argument that since WandaVision is this going to be this whole trippy alternate universe, not really reality kind of thing, that maybe as a little Easter egg, they say Evan Peters is Quicksilver. Hey, you're the sister I never got to see grow up, or I don't know. They could do something like that theoretically, but no. Listen, Kevin Feige has always said he's already got his plan. He's got a 5-year plan for his MCU that did not include X-Men. I do not think they're going to use WandaVision to introduce the X-Men into the world, because that would go against what Kevin Feige said. Could he have changed his mind? Possible, but all we can go on is what has Feige said for now. It's possible he changed his mind, but I think we've got to operate on the assumption that Feige meant what he said and said what he meant. And then we don't even know if he's going to be there. So I really wouldn't pay too much attention to it for now. Let's see if it keeps getting whispered. Let's see if Deadline does run a story about it or something like that. And if it does, then we can get a little bit more serious in the discussions of it. Until then, it's probably not worth discussing too much. All right, Topher Rocks writes, Jim Carrey in The Truman Show is one of the best performances of all time. I don't agree with that. I think it's one of his best performances, but I wouldn't put it in the top 30, 40, or 50 greatest performances of all time, although I really did like him, and I thought he was a good Canadian kid, of course. Anyway, Jim Carrey in The Truman Show is one of the best performances of all time. The range of emotions he goes through in that film is incredible. Not sure who won the Oscar that year, but it should have been Jim. I don't agree. I think he's really, really good in that. But by the way, I don't even think that was Jim Carrey's best performance. I think Jim Carrey's best performance is The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But man, he was great as Robotnik in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I'm not saying that was his greatest performance. I'm just saying that. But hey, listen, performances, like movies themselves, are subjective. And if that is one of your all-time favorite standalone performances, excellent. You know, I don't even think Jim Carrey was nominated for best actor in that. I know he was nominated for a Golden Globe, which is pointless and useless and doesn't really count for anything. I know he was nominated for a Golden Globe for that. He might have even won the Golden Globe for that. Let me just double check here. Okay. Yes, Golden Globe. He won Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture for The Truman Show. He was also nominated. He's got 7 nominees for Golden Globes. For his TV show Kidding, for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, for Man on the Moon. He was good in that one too. He was really good in Man on the Moon. Truman Show, Liar Liar, and The Mask. I love The Mask. But he did not get nominated for the Oscar at all. And again, like I said, for me, I thought he was very good in Truman Show. Very, very good. One of the greatest performances of all time. I wouldn't go there, but hey, that's how you felt, and there's nothing wrong with that. For me, like I said, it's not even his best performance. I think you got to look at, hell, I think I might even put Man on the Moon above his performance in Truman Show. But I definitely put his performance in Eternal Sunshine above it, but that's just me. And it's a good, hey, listen, always good to talk Jim Carrey, though, my friend. Always good to talk Jim Carrey. All right, Ben Rayner writes, hey, John. Well, yesterday I watched A Few Dollars More, another great Eastwood movie. Yes, indeed. I love this genre now. A lot of people have been writing in about during the lockdown, like they've been getting into Westerns. A lot of people never watch the old Westerns, and a lot of people are now, particularly the Clint Eastwood ones. Today I watched your favorite, Unforgiven. I looked up the cast, and my gosh, talked about a stacked cast. I cannot wait to watch and share my thoughts. To me, Unforgiven is the best Western of all time. Let me just bring up Unforgiven here, just so we can go through the cast. Okay, so this movie is almost 30 years old now, which is crazy. I mean, it's an older film, but it doesn't feel like it's that old. Listen to this cast. Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Richard Ferris, Dumbledore was in there as well. Anthony James, he's like one of the great character actors. I believe he passed away recently, but he was just one of the great ones. I mean, but just listen to the top four bill. Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, Richard Harris. I mean, just all that right there. What are you doing, Bill? It is, in my opinion, the greatest Western of all time. I love that one. I'm very excited for you to give it a chance, Ben, and for you to check it out. Okay, next up, Dave XP writes, John, I had the same feelings about the first episode of Space Force. I didn't even find it funny, but please watch the second one. It's hilarious. And the third one is where you can really see the heart of the show. Okay, that's good for me to hear, because I haven't had anybody else tell me that I should keep going with it. I've only told people that, I watched the first episode, didn't really work for me, blah, blah, blah. You're the first person to tell me that it might get better. So I'll tell you what, Dave, I'm going to take you up on that. I will try the next couple of episodes, and I will report back and let you know what I think. So I'm trusting you here, Dave. I'm trusting you here. Let's see how this all works out. All right. Thanks for the recommendation, dude. All right. Double Crit writes, I recently saw The Killing of a Sacred Deer, highly polarizing film. Me and one friend liked it, but the others hated it. Have you seen this? Does it work for you, or did you find the acting direction off? It has Nicole Kidman, boobs, by the way. I completely forget who directed it. Hold on a second here. This one only came out like a couple of years ago, too. And I don't even know that it got a theatrical... Oh, you know what? No. I take it all back. This is the one with Colin Farrell. I'm sorry. I was thinking of another film. I did not watch this one. I knew the film we were talking about, but then I was thinking it was another one that I saw. Sorry, this is not the one that I was thinking about. So Stephen, a charismatic surgeon, is forced to make an unthinkable sacrifice after his life starts to fall apart when the behavior of a teenage boy he has taken under his wing turns sinister. Okay, so that one I did not watch. So I can't comment. I was thinking, this is why it's good to look them up before I start talking and realize I'm talking about completely the wrong movie. I don't think this one got a theatrical release. I'm almost positive I was thinking about another film. As soon as I saw Colin Farrell was in it, I was like, oh, no, this is not the movie I was thinking of. So no, unfortunately, Double Crit can't comment on it because I did not see it. If any of you guys have watched it, let Double Crit know what you think about it. All right, Elizabeth J writes, has San Diego Comic-Con ever confirmed they were going to go through with a virtual con? Have a good weekend. I believe they did because they reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested if I would do a virtual panel. They reached out to me and asked me if I would do my my Masters of the Web panel, but do it virtually this year. I don't think it works virtually. Not that other panels wouldn't work. I just didn't think my panel would work all that good virtually. But you never know. But I believe it's confirmed that they are doing that. I could be wrong about that, Elizabeth, but I believe that is confirmed. All right, Morris Codes writes, we're just down to the last couple of questions, guys. There's a website I find reliable for finding streamable stuff called justwatch.com, which usually tells you everywhere a movie can be streamed. Free, subscription, rent, buy, etc. Unfortunately, Schneps, The Death Superman Lives, What Happens seems to be unavailable anywhere right now. I did not realize that. Because it was on Showtime for a period of time, I just figured it would be available somewhere to stream or rent or watch. That's intriguing. It's unfortunate if that's the case. I'm going to guess, like, I don't know what Holly has done with the movie, because Holly was the co-producer of that movie along with Schnepp. And I don't know what she's done with it right now, if they're still selling DVDs and Blu-rays of it, or if it is. I will look into that, Morse Codes. That's interesting. Thank you for letting me know that. That's unfortunate if it's not available anywhere to watch. All right. Final question of the day. Oh, sorry. I'm just getting a text message here. Okay, nothing bad. Just it's just a little important, but nothing bad. Okay, final message of the day, because we're rounding out to the 3-hour mark here. So anyway, Deckard 2049 writes, excited for the Labyrinth sequel. However, no David Bowie. Jareth the Goblin King has me super bummed, and missing Bowie even more. Just like when I heard Bowie was the original choice for Wallace in Blade Runner 2049. Leto was good, but he's no David effing Bowie. Well, yeah, it's Jared Leto is 3 times the actor David Bowie was. I mean, there was the presence of David Bowie is great, but Jared Leto is a better actor than David Bowie was. I mean, Bowie's great, particularly in Labyrinth. And I like him in Zoolander too. Bowie was great, don't get me wrong, but I mean, Jared Leto is a world-class Academy Award-winning actor, so yeah, there's that. And Leto probably did, but hey, it would have been pretty cool to see Bowie in that as well. You're right. Missing Bowie in this is going to be something that everybody feels, particularly those who did watch the original. Because as hard as it is to believe, there's going to be a lot of people who watch this new Labyrinth film who have never seen the original. I know that sounds shocking. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds hard to believe. Everybody's seen Labyrinth. Actually, no, a lot of people have never seen Labyrinth. Just like as each year passes, there's more and more and a higher percentage of people who've never seen Godfather. As unbelievable as that sounds, there's a lot of people today who've never seen Godfather, and there's a lot of people who've never seen Labyrinth. I gotta tell you though, I still think the poetic thing to do would have been to get Duncan Jones, director of Moon, director of Warcraft. I think the more poetic thing to do would have been to get Duncan Jones. What's the one on the trade? Something Code. The one that he did with Jake, that Duncan Jones did about the train. It's actually a pretty good movie. The one he did with Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's on the train. Jeffrey Wright's in it. It's Something Code. I can't remember the name of the film off the top of my head. Source Code. Thank you, Quirky Joe. Quirky Joe in the live chat just wrote in. It's Source Code. Source Code. Pretty damn good movie. And by the way, Duncan Jones, director of Moon and Source Code and all that, David Bowie's son. I thought there would have been something kind of poetic and romantic, if you will, about the idea of Duncan Jones directing that. But he's not, and that's okay. It's going to be interesting to see how that all kind of turns out, though, man. It's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But you're right. I think for those of us who've seen the original Labyrinth, we're probably going to feel the absence of David Bowie. I think you're right about there. All right, guys. that will do it for today's installment. We went 2 hours and 45 minutes. That will do it, but it's a Friday going into the weekend. That'll do it for this installment of the John Campea Show, guys. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us on this Friday. Listen, guys, don't forget, tomorrow on Saturday, we will be doing an open mic in the morning. You guys can start sending in your questions for that open mic now if you choose. If the earlier you send them in, the first they're going to be answered by going to streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. Not only are you going to get your question on the show, it also supports the channel at the same time, and all of us here thank you for that. Again, guys, you can start sending in topics to be main topics for next week's John Campea Show starting on Monday. Just go to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. It's totally free. Hit submit, and you just might see one of your topics or questions featured as a main topic on Monday's John Campea Show. Guys, I hope you have a really good weekend. There's a lot going on in the world. Pay attention to it, but make sure you give yourself a break from it as well. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Do all those good things, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.